Ladies and gentlemen, the Loreweek. It has been a minute, but we do have a couple of things to discuss today. So I figured we'd go ahead and do that now. Whoops. Did it finish? Sorry, I got a whole bunch of stuff going on in the background here. Oh, looks like it finished. Okay. All right. So as usual, I like to put show news right at the beginning so that people don't have to watch the whole video if they're not interested. So one of the things that was actually suggested by a couple of people in both the YouTube comments and on stream was a new method of organizing the VODs, which we put on the Lore Runner stream archives channel. If you happen to notice, great. No one seems to have noticed, or at least nobody's commented on it, but we're starting to do a different thing. And I want a little bit of feedback here, again, from the YouTube comments, as well as from people live. So right now, for example, we've been playing through Elden Ring. And right now, Elden Ring is going into a playlist called Soulsborne Games, aka organized by genre. So the idea here is that we can go ahead and slot those in as we do them, and then, you know, rather than... So, because the old way we did it was premiere runs and classic runs. And then several people said, like, this sucks. I was like, okay, well, what else we can do? So we started doing more of a categorization thing, you know, a yearly thing. People said, nah, that sucks. So we started doing a monthly thing. People said, well, that's useful, but hang on. Maybe you should do it by genre. So now we're doing it by genre. And that's kind of the process going forwards. So if that works, cool. If it doesn't work, cool. If people want us to put it in genre as well as in premiere runs, we could do that. We could also just kind of make one massive playlist of all archives ever, if people want me to do that. Like, I've been thinking about that anyways, and that way it would be, you could just have the everything playlist, or you could have the genre playlist, whatever. That's up to you all. I don't know. I just thought I'd mention it and get some feedback, as I always do. Thank you, Blue Alex, very much, as always. I will jot that down for something, if you... I'm going to take this document up here. Black Eagles, that's what that is. I'm just staring at that like, I know what that means, I just can't think of it. I can't think of it. Everyone says it sucks, Damashi. Every day I get that comment in my head. Actually, I do get a lot of comments periodically saying, hey, Lore, your whole process sucks. And it's like, oh, thanks for the feedback. Do you have any other comments? No, just you suck. Okay, cool. That's cool. Believe it or not, that's actually all I've got for show news. As a fresh reminder, we are still doing the absolutely streaming my brains out thing until we get caught up in the queue. The queue is kind of going the way it is, but I should probably mention there is another thing that I wanted people's feedback on. So... I'm actually going to wait on that, because as much as I like to do that, I want as many people feedbacking on that as possible. So all I'm going to say is that I'll put a link in the VOD below to when that happens. So let's go ahead and move on to random news. Go ahead and shuffle this around. Xenoblade 3 got a release date. It's actually pushed forward, which is really strange. That's kind of unusual. Usually it's pushed backwards. I'm not complaining. Woo. I will continue to not... I mean, there's nothing else to add there. Also, Splatoon 3 got a release date. Woo. That's... sorry, I should give those release dates. It's July something? I swore I wrote this down. I obviously didn't. I think I wrote it down on my phone. It's July something for Xenoblade 3. And September 9th, I think, for Splatoon 3. So both those games have release dates, and those are locked in. Woo! In completely unrelatable... Oh yeah, I left that on from when we were doing Borderlands. No longer a thing, but cool. Hang on. There we go. Bagoom! There we go. We're good. We're good. How was I talking about? TERA Online is getting shut down. Now, call me a weirdo, but I'm actually really unhappy with this one. Because on the one hand, TERA Online is a garbage MMO that can go to hell. But on the other hand, they're just pulling the plug completely. There's actually a whole site that lists the specifics, but none of it matters. They're actually pulling the plug. They are shutting down the servers. They are shutting down the systems. The game is going away, rather than going on maintenance mode, which always irritates me for many reasons. As a fresh reminder, we have tangible, factual numbers that show that leaving an MMO on life support, essentially on what we call maintenance mode, is extraordinarily cheap. It costs almost nothing to maintain. But, as is per usual, most MMOs tend to get shut down as opposed to just maintenance moding, so TERA Online is now leaving historical context, so that sucks. And that's the biggest reason I'm upset about that, the whole historical preservation thing. Because TERA Online did actually suck, in my honest opinion. I've actually commented on it before. In fact, we talked about it when we were going through the FF14 run, because TERA Online was one of many, many MMOs which follow the same format, which is there's like a tutorial zone which is really story heavy, and then there's like a 1 through 20 campaign experience, which is virtually non-existent on the story axis, and then you go PvP for the rest of the game. And I bet if you thought about it, you could think of 5 or 6 or 20 other MMOs that follow that exact same format, because it's a really common one. But anyways, so yeah, that little part of history is getting destroyed forever, and that sucks. Moving on. Let's actually talk about this first. Let's talk about Huthor. Now, Huthor sucks, obviously, as we all know. What would you like to put that to, Huthor? And thank you. As always. I keep mentally going to hit E and left arrow, and if you don't know what that means, that would be the thank you that I've been doing in Elden Ring. The question is if anybody will give enough of a damn. Is that the 4-year? That is the 4-year, my goodness. Thank you very, very much for 4 years of support, Ciela. Very, 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 very much. And I will put that 4-year anniversary towards Diablo 1. I'll put Huthor's towards Total War Warhammer 3. Okay, this is a brief one, even though it's actually ludicrously complicated. Some of you may or may not be aware of the fact that there's still multiple ongoing legal battles going on at Actiblizzard, which has only gotten weirder in the weight of the acquisitions that are trying to go through. Now, one of the things that's happened is, and I'm just gonna be nice and blunt. Okay, can I do that? Greedy idiots who want more money have been suing Actiblizzard and the board in order to try and say that this deal for being sold to Microsoft shouldn't happen. Now, I could go into detail about why I have that opinion, but I'm not going to. So these greedy idiots have been doing this for some time. It's actually nothing new. But what's funny is that Actiblizzard has been going wildly out of their way to try and shut down these lawsuits as quickly and as fast as they can, which actually I'm completely in favor of. And you might be thinking, why would you be in favor of that, Lore? Well, first of all, greedy idiots can go to hell in general. But second, and substantially more importantly, the biggest thing the greedy idiots want is for the acquisition to be cancelled. And then they want to go try and shop around, which isn't going to work out in any way, shape, or form. So since I am very much in favor of Actiblizzard being acquired by Microsoft, I tend to be against people who are trying to stop that from happening. Anyways, the latest attempt that Actiblizzard has been doing, which might actually win, we'll see where this goes, this is still something that needs to be ruled on by a judge, is they are trying to... So one of the biggest complaints that the lawsuit, the specific filing has, is you haven't given us enough information to do your due diligence as the board, and therefore you're biased! You're biased towards this thing. We weren't given enough information to properly vote on whether or not we should be acquired by Microsoft. So, what they've done in response to this is just said, okay, here's all the documents. Just shotgunned documents and shoved them out there into open status to effectively just kind of cut off that part of the legal filing in its entirety. Moving on. Speaking of legality, One of the things that you may or may not be aware of is that there is no proper unionization for video game developers in the country that I live in. And that country is the country of Spartan J42. I've never even heard of that game, but I will look it up later. Is Bad Company 2 on the list, Spartan? Is Sphinx on the list? Hang on, let me pull up my own website, because it's just easier to use my website to keep track of this stuff. Cursed Mummy is on the list. Well, there you go. Well, done, then. If it's already on the list, then it's already on the list. Thank you, Spartan, very much. I will put that towards the game that is already on the list, which is Sphinx and the Cursed Mummy, which I have no idea what it is. But whenever someone added it, I did my due diligence to figure it out. That's how that system works. I can't keep track of 400 games. All right, so union. There's no proper unions for video games in the country that I live in for video game development. Now, whether that's good or bad is irrelevant. That has nothing to do with what we're discussing today. What we are discussing is that the QA team specifically at Ravensoft have been making efforts for almost a year at this point to try and unionize, to try and actually get together their own union in order to take care of themselves, yada, yada, yada. Now, whether you're in favor or not is not relevant. I'm just here to share the news on the specifics of what's going on with that, because I wanted to just describe a little bit of why the unionization has been so successfully fought against. Because you'd think it would be a relatively easy thing to unionize. In fact, it only requires a 3-step process. A move to vote, a call to vote, and then the vote itself. And then, done, you're unionized. There's some paperwork involved, but that really is it. If I ran a company with, Blue Wolf Alex and Spartan and Mr. Red, the 3 of you, all that's required is 2 of you to get together. That is actually legally the minimum amount. I looked it up. 2 of you to sit down and say, we want to have a union under, the Lorewalkers. And then you go ahead, get the cards, sign those, turn those in the NLRB, which is the National Labor Relations Board, and say, hey, we would like to have this ratified as a union. The NLRB looks over your case and says, yes, nothing is interfering with this thing. You go ahead and vote. That's the call to vote. Then the 2 of you vote. You both vote yes. You now have a union. Boom. That really is all it takes. But again, you can see why when you have more than 2 people involved, it gets to be complicated. Let me just toss you one of my favorite complications. This is a real example, by the way. I'm not going to name names. Let's say that everyone in chat is a member of a company that I run. And it's a little company, and it's just 20 people or whatever. And they're like, hey, Lore, we've been thinking about getting a union going together. And I, as your boss, say, well, let's sit down and chat about it. Like what's the issue? You could just ask me what the problem is and we can figure it out. And I want to stress that let's pretend that I'm doing this in full faith, right? Like I'm doing this with all genuine intentions. And so you all say, well, we'd like a little bit more benefits. We'd like to cut back on hours a little bit. It's been cutting into my real life time. And we'd like our pay to be balanced a little bit to kind of offset that. And I say, yeah, sure, no problem. Believe it or not, what I just did is actually illegal and something that I could be called on by the NLRB. That is legally union busting. because that's just life. Because the whole point is there's a lot of little exceptions, but you're not supposed to do anything negatively or positively to influence your employee's decision to become a union. You were supposed to be completely hands-off. Anyone in the exclusion zone, which is actually this weird little morass of certain people. It's mostly management, but it also includes other people for some friggin' reason. So it's this whole thing, right? Hang on one moment. I gotta write down a bunch of stuff. There we go. All right. So you might be wondering hang on, Lore, if it's so damned easy in order to unionize, even here in the States, why hasn't there really been a video game union yet? Not a video game console. Well, the thing is this. There are... let's talk about specifics. Let's get into zooming in a little bit onto how... What do they call them? Collective bargaining units work. Now, for those of you who don't actually know what a collective bargaining unit is, a collective bargaining unit is the legally defined term for a group of people who, in fact, actually, I wrote it down here. A unit of employees, this is the legal definition, a unit of employees where two or more employees who share a community of interest and may reasonably be grouped together for purposes of collective bargaining. That is a collective bargaining unit. It's specifically the thing that defines what a given union is. It's that union of those people in that collective bargaining unit. Make sense? What does this have to do with anything? Well, the single most common strategy that has been used by video game developers for years and years and years now, in order to prevent those from happening, is they say, well, Javan over there, who's part of our QA department, isn't actually the same as Magister over there, who's part of our art department. Except they totally are. I'm sorry, I'm saying this in reverse. I'm sorry. The company is saying that you're the same. The people are saying you're different. So, Javan is like, no, I'm a QA tester. I want a QA union for QA people. And Magister is like, yeah, no, I'm an art designer. I don't have anything to do with this. And I'm like, no, you're both developers. You both develop the video game. You're both part of the product production process. You both qualify as having a shared community of interest and may reasonably group together for purposes of collective bargaining. Now you might say, well, who gives a damn? Why is that relevant? Well, let's say that if I have now made this argument, and let's say that Javan calls for a union and gets some cards, but only gets the cards of the QA department because they're the ones who really need the union, because everyone else is taken care of because they're salaried employees. Well, now then the process is stopped right there. You don't even have enough people to start the process of an election. You can't even get to the call purpose of an election because the NLB won't even see it because they don't have enough numbers in order to qualify as a percentile majority. Make sense? So this is one of the biggest things that companies have used in the video game industry. And again, I'm just sticking with the video game industry for a second. Have used in order to try and shut down unionization for forever. They say, well, no, you know, all members, all of our employees, all our several thousand employees would all be part of the same union, and a percentage of those people don't actually want to unionize, so they don't unionize. Now, what's been happening is Ravensoft's QA department specifically has been really trying to push for a Ravensoft QA department union. And again, the usual pushback has been happening. Now, the reason this is significant is because I think all the subs have finally gone through, and I can say thank you to Magister. Thank you very, very much, Magister. I do ever and always appreciate those subs. Very much appreciate. Thank you. By the way, no, a union of one person cannot exist legally within the United States. I don't know about other countries, but it is not allowed here. You do have to be 2 people plus. Greater than or equal to 2. So, let's assume for a moment that, yeah, I'm not even going to talk about that, John. So that's been the biggest argument. Now, the Ravensoft QA department has been pushing for this pretty hard. This is one of the reasons it's so unique. The overwhelming majority of times that game developers have tried to push for unionization, there's just been too many people who don't want to bother. Now, I'm not here to cast judgment. That's not the point. I'm just stating facts. There are too many people who don't want to stick out. There's too many people who don't want to risk their jobs. There's too many people who don't want to risk their careers by having a black mark on their record by saying, I tried to unionize, which other companies will probably look at and say, I don't want to hire you because you were part of that nonsense. So too many people usually just say, nope. Well, as a consequence of this, the QA department at Ravensoft pushing so hard and so long is unusual by itself. Now, the other thing is, hang on, I'm going to add another niggle to this, because there's a category of people who cannot unionize, who cannot qualify for unionization when it comes to certain companies. Now, again, I've actually already mentioned that. That's mostly the management team. But again, there's little dips into the thing, and one of the biggest one is what's called temporary employment agreements, aka temps, which also qualifies for contractors. Contractors and temps are legally exempt from unions, period. That's just a hard line. So that's one of those wonderful things which there's just no getting around until the actual legal definition changes on that one. Good freaking luck. Regardless, this is still something Ravensoft keeps pushing for, and finally have reached out to the NLRB personally and have been pushing forward this group. And this is so funny the way this worked out, because within the last week, what finally happened is the NLRB did actually call for an election. Step 2 has happened. Now, believe it or not, this is actually extraordinarily significant. This is precedence happening in the works right here. Where this goes, who frickety knows, but the reason this is so significant is for two very large reasons. Number one is the most obvious. This is the first major attempt that's actually succeeded at anything. They're actually calling for the votes, calling for the election. Now, they still have to have the election, ratify the election. There are still ways to appeal this. By all accounts, the companies involved are actually appealing this. But that being stated, there is something else related there too. So you might be thinking, what changed? The biggest thing that changed is the QA department at Ravensoft have very strongly argued and successfully gotten a judge to rule that the QA department is the QA department. Now, I know that sounds so stupid, but I mean, remember, the biggest defense that they've been using is that a union has to include everyone, and therefore we need a percentage of everyone in order to qualify for this collective bargaining unit to be legally ratified and acknowledged by the NLRB. The QA department has flat out stated, no, we're the QA department, we are the collective bargaining union, we have enough percentage, we are going to be the members of this union, the end. And that's it, and that's all. So that group has successfully argued and managed to make the judge lean that way. That ruling has happened. It can and is still being appealed. Now, the funny thing about this is I wonder if the companies who have been pushing this for so long have any idea the box that they have just allowed to open. Because this theoretically means that of their many employees, larger companies like Actiblizzard might have to start dealing with 10, 15, or 20 different unions, depending on how their division of labor happens. Because now, they can no longer argue that everyone who is a video game developer is part of the same group. They have to say, well, okay, those are people, and those are people, and those are people. And actually, the document, which I'm not going to link here because it's this insanely huge document, I'll link it in the VOD. I'll link it in the VOD. But it actually lists, it argues and gives a definition for multiple other people who are not the QA department and therefore do not qualify as the QA department's collective bargaining union. So we'll see where that goes. Again, appealing is already happening because, of course, the companies do not want unions, and so they are still trying to push against that. Yada, 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 yada. So that's where we're at with that one, but I figured that was sufficiently large news in order to go ahead and comment on it. We'll see where it goes. That's actually it, believe it or not, for random news. That's just 27 minutes, good lord. But I do want to share one other thing. So, my wonderful friend, my good friend Pax, had an idea last night. Because I was doing some research on the new WoW expansion, which many people have asked me to comment on and talk about and discuss, which is, of course, the primary thing we're doing here. I think it's terrible in every way, and is one of the biggest reasons why I'm pushing for STO to be, the STO run to be done sooner rather than later, Mike Kamano. So, here's the catch. I haven't read up on any of the WoW Dragonflight stuff yet. Now you're probably thinking, why? That's your whole job. Pax's idea was, why don't I do it live? Why don't I give you guys my reactions live as we read through and discuss the information that has come out regarding the new expansion? And I didn't have time anyways for any, so I kind of acquiesced, but I thought it was a decent enough idea to go ahead and go for it. It was that or get less sleep last night. And just stay up the extra couple hours. Now, here's the thing. We do have something to vote on, believe it or not. And that is whether or not we watch the video, which I have over here. It's about an hour long. I'm just going to warn you about that. It's not necessary to watch the video. Nevertheless, we do have, even if we don't watch the video, I do have lots of information all nicely summarized here, which I'll be scrolling through and reacting to. So it's kind of up to you guys whether we watch the video live and then do the read-through, or whether we just do the read-through. I am ambivalent. So while we do that, let me get a thing going here. You can let me get a thing going, right, Twitch? Oh, we'll skip the Wrath stuff, because I don't care. Sorry. I mean, I'll talk about the Wrath thing, but I don't care. I don't care. I have no understanding of why there's a Wrath Classic. That makes no sense to me whatsoever. I was in favor of Vanilla Classic. End statement. Anyways. And let me go ahead and get the voot going. There we go. There's the voot. 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 Leave that running. That's there. That's there. Well, thank you, Emperor Valerian. Yes, plug for the World of Lorecraft series. It goes live every Sunday. It's a thing that we do with the place and the stuff. I should probably shut down Discord. There we go. Yeah, today's episode was Swamp of Sorrows, I believe, which means next week will be Blasted Lands, and then the week after that will be Dune Morrogue. It'll be Dune Morrogue, and then the Locks. I can't think of the name of the zone. Oh my god. The Locks zone, then the Wetlands, then the Badlands, and then the Searing Gorge. Lochmadon, thank you. And once we get to the Searing Gorge, that's when the Cataclysm stuff really starts to ramp up, because that's going to include the dungeons and raids of the Blackrock Spire and the Blackrock Depths. And the episode immediately after that is Bashir, when we've been to modern Cataclysm proper. So we're about a month, no, 2 months, I don't know, however many that is out from when things really start ramping up. And thank you, MS Cardo, very much, as always. I will put that towards Deus Ex Human Revolution. But not unionizing, because, see, I don't think you understand that you are included in the Lore Walkers along with Mr. Red, who really doesn't want to unionize, so I'm afraid I'm just going to have to ask you to not unionize. You can't be legally ratified, sorry. Anyways. Check this down. Whoops. Yep, you're all lore walkers. You can't unionize. You're just all lore walkers. That's just how that works. I mean, unions are bad for you. Some of the anti-union campaigns have actually been rather funny. I shouldn't even say that. But it has been amusing. Some of the slogans that companies have been coming up with to try and say, no, union's bad. And it's like, it's so funny because, of course, unions can be bad. I myself have had bad experience with unions. But, like, that's not what they don't use arguments that actually make sense. They don't say, hey, you know, there's this kind of corruption that can happen, or there's this kind of work that can happen, or this kind of thing that can happen. No, instead they're like, you know, unions are Hitler. And that's just... Yeah, I wasn't going to name names, but Amazon's anti-union efforts have actually been a little bit silly. It's just, what? Yes, I'm going to be playing Elden Ring forever. So the biggest... I'll answer this. This ties into what Mike Romano said earlier. Mike Romano mentioned, you know, hang on, aren't unions voluntary? How can requiring more people to qualify for a union make a union not happen? At least I assume that's what your question was, Mike Romano. I didn't quite understand, which is why I didn't respond to you at the time. The idea is, if you and Bob and George decide to just stage a walkout of your job in protest of something your job is doing, legally speaking, you are not... I can't remember what that's called. But basically, you've quit. You have been negligent in your duty, and you are fired. And nothing will protect you from being fired for doing that, because you're not a union. The legal ratification of unions and the legal recognizing of union actions is what gives you legal protection from retaliation from union actions. So if you are part of a union, And the union sits down and says, hey, we're going to stage a walkout at this date, on this time, for this reason, because of these grievances, file. Then when you do that, the company can't just say, oh, well, then you're fired for walking out of your job. And that's the concept there. Whether that's good, bad, or in between, that's not something I'm commenting on. I'm just telling you how it is. Well, that's valid, Mike Kamana, but the problem is, legally speaking, the majority of people need to join a union in order for a union to exist, in order for it to be legally ratified, because the union has to be considered to be representative of the majority of the employees' interests, is the legal requirement there. So, in other words, if, you know, 20 people want to join a union, and 23 people don't, then they actually can't. They are not legally allowed to form a union. That's how that works. Because they no longer represent the majority of the employees in question. So, no union. So anyways, looks like everyone wants me to watch and read, which means we'll be watching first. Now, I have actually seen exactly one thing here. And that will be this thing that I'll be finding. Once I change pages, it's going to take me a moment here. You know, I might just do this. Let's just do this the easy way. Is everyone cool if I just lazy mode this today? Is that cool? Is that cool? Everyone cool? Cool. Okay, lazy mode engaged. Just going to lazy mode this. Bagoom. We're going to hit the wrong button. Very important part of the process. We're seeding the RNG. There we go. Lazy mode engaged. Let's kill the music. Remember, this is an hour long, but we will be skipping some of it because I don't give a damn about Wrath. Moving on. Make sure volume's up. Let me know how the volume is.
Hi, everyone. I'm John Haidt, General Manager for Warcraft, and with me today are my friends Ian Hazzikostas, who is the Game Director for World of Warcraft, and Holly Longdale, who leads up the production team for WoW Classic. I really appreciate you tuning in. I know we're really excited to be able to give you updates on what's happening in World of Warcraft. But first, I want to thank our community for all the feedback you've given us this year.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Thank you for all the feedback you've given us this year. Is that what we're calling that now?
And especially our community council. You've helped shape and influence the updates that we've done recently and what you're going to see in the upcoming year.
I mean, really, for Shadowlands in particular, the story of the last 9 months or so of this expansion is all about the community, and it's shaped by what we've been hearing from
Really?
and us realizing as a team that we just collectively needed to do a better job of making sure the community felt heard, and so that led us to the changes we made in 9.1.5, but also really re-examining some of the assumptions and foundations of World of Warcraft about things like character investment and mains versus alts, or how catch-up should work, or the appropriate role of friction in our systems. And I think 9.1.5 represented a step in the direction of letting players have more freedom to play.
Okay, I'm sorry. The director in me has to step in here. Pro tip from one director to another. There's a talent for wanting to make sure that your people sound like they're engaged in a conversation, because you don't want them just to stare, you know, boringly. But don't do the nodding head thing. Don't do that. It looks awful. It always looks awful. It always looks fake. Don't ever do the nodding head thing. You can see her doing this here in this. She's just like, yep, I'm definitely listening to what's being said, even though this is a rehearsed thing it's actually probably has multiple takes and has been done multiple times. So don't do that.
World of Warcraft the way they want to play it, and we really built our Eternity's End content update from the ground up around those principles.
What are some of the things?
Okay, hang on. I'm going to pause one more time, because you probably think I'm being unfair on this because of anti-Warcraft bias, and you'd be wrong. Actually, what's really strange here is that Eon has so far sounded the most legitimate of these three people, which is weird. But it's true. What he just said is actual non-corporate speak, non-PR data. He actually just said something real. It's weird to see that. Okay, sure, I can show my face. We're gonna have to change screens to do it. We'll go down here. Nope, that didn't work. Okay, this is just our lives now. This is just everything. Okay, hang on. We can make this work. We got this. It's apparently Eon. I don't think I've ever heard that name said out loud before. A pro WoW bias. Yes. Now we just get ourselves going here. Too big. Hang on. Give me a minute. No, there we go. That seems much better. All right. We'll be over here in the corner. This good? This is what I got. Okay, back to it.
Things that the community said that influenced your decisions for Eternity's End.
Things like the method and pacing of acquisition of the Covenant Legendary item, tons of tuning, and I think every step of the way, we were
nodding again.
listening to make sure that we were carrying forward those lessons learned in the course of 915 into Eternity's End and beyond.
So WoW Classic came about because of the community.
Yeah, they continue to help guide and support us as Classic evolves.
World of Warcraft has always been about the world and the players that inhabit it. And we are, in a lot of ways, curators and caretakers of that journey and of that experience. And so once this Classic community formed and grew, we had to listen to them.
It's this tide of listening to the community and paying attention to what is a good experience for our players now. And where we really saw a sea change in this idea is with our Season of Mastery realm, which is a Season of Fresh Start Classic. And initially we were talking about it like it was going to be like a fresh start. Let's try this experiment in a season. It'll be about a year long.
Oh, sorry, director, I'll nod slower.
Started seeing this upswell.
Yeah, the team just took that idea and ran with it and turned, what started out as a small community project into this Soul of Iron system that became a centerpiece of Season of Mastery and a whole new opt-in hardcore mode that we've seen communities built around.
Yeah.
She's still doing it. She's still doing it. Stop it.
5 hours. I made it 5 hours.
Yeah. And it continues, like Burning Crusade Classic. We wanted to balance the
Real quick, anybody out there who cares, why do you want something like Burning Crusade Classic? No judgment, real question. I'm actually curious. Because the only argument I've ever heard that's what I would consider to be a legitimate argument for BC Classic, or anything past Vanilla Classic, is something that there's another method they could do rather than BC Classic. Oh, by the way, when we review BC, I am not playing BC Classic because I don't hate myself.
Paladin seals between Horde and Alliance, so we made an addition there. We wouldn't have gotten there without the community's input.
So, influence the community, you've got another update and pretty significant controversial change for this.
Yeah, cross-faction play coming in 925.
Okay, I'm going to jump in there. I actually pay a lot of attention to communities and posts and feedback and vibes. I try to keep my ear to the ground, so to speak. I'm not sure why you consider that a controversial change, because I have heard nothing but universal positivity for that change.
Which is on our public test realm now as a big
Ian,
centerpiece.
cross-faction. Yep. You're breaking with a 17-year tradition.
Yeah, it's something. It was not an easily made decision by any means, and I think this is another one of those areas where really we try to take to heart community feedback and requests and ask ourselves as a team whether there's a way to accommodate such an earnestly held desire and still feel like we're being true to the roots of the game.
Pause. Sonic Doctor asks a question. He says, is in lore cross-faction always a thing? Yes, it's been true since vanilla.
Yeah, I think players desire to play with their friends who might prefer a different faction, or to play with the faction that they more closely identify with, even though their raid group is elsewhere.
It's really important for me. I play a lot of alts, and I love absorbing the story for each race, and having that ability to play with all of my friends across factions is fantastic.
At the end of the day, the battle cry is for the Horde. It's not against the Alliance. It's not death to the Alliance. It's about pride in one's faction. And I think there's a way to preserve that and even strengthen that while giving players the ability to make the same choice we've seen the greatest heroes make time and time again.
I can't wait to do this. I'm seeing a lot of my friends that I never
She's still
knew
doing it.
an actual
She's
character
still
in
doing it.
their faction.
All right, so that's a valid point, Huthor. I'm not sure I agree with you. Let me go ahead and talk about one of my biggest problems with BC Classic and Wrath Classic. That is a huge amount of time and investment for nostalgia and nothing else. It's not really relevant for historical preservation because BC and Wrath are still there. Yes, they're different, but they're still there. The content remains. I could go play BC right now on live server. When we do the WoW BC review, we'll be doing it on the live server. We will not be doing BC Classic. I could say the same thing for Wrath. I could say the same thing for Cataclysm and everything other than vanilla. The biggest reason I was always massively in favor of WoW Classic for vanilla was for the fact that there was no way to actually experience vanilla anymore. Vanilla was nuked. It was gone. It was erased. So now it's not. You actually have the ability to play vanilla. That's awesome. Huthor's comment is certainly valid, but I don't consider it valid enough to justify the expenditure, to be blunt. Like, the manager in me looks at that and says, well, you're right, but why do I care enough to bother with the time and effort and investure to set up separate servers, to set up separate, to set aside team members whose job it is full-time to set up and maintain a separate server to maintain that snapshot of the past. Now, if there's enough people that want it, well, I don't have any metrics to that. They don't release metrics available to that because why would they tell us actual information? But if I, as the manager, was able to look at the actual metrics which they have access to and say that there is demand for that, then sure, that makes sense. But otherwise, I would look at this like just a colossal waste. Moving on.
Suddenly come out of the woodwork.
And then, with these cross-faction groups, many of them are going to be diving into something new that we're doing to kind of cap off Shadowlands, a Season 4. Kind of a remix, a bit of a greatest hits, revisiting all of our raid zones across the expansion, bringing in some familiar...
Oh yeah, one other thing. Sorry, there is actually another reason which I'm against this. There's a concept when it comes to corporations and any form of entertainment that's called building expectation. Let me use an example really quick. Let's say that the Star Trek Rewrite Project comes out with this massive, fully 3D, fully voice-acted episode for Episode 1, and then sprite work animation like I've been doing for Episode 2, and then just a static picture, which is me narrating over it for Episode 3. Now, the problem here is what I have done is I have created expectation, and I have then violated that expectation. You always have to be careful when it comes to management of anything, whether it's a nation or a company or just you sitting at home writing a story on fanfiction.net, because you have to be careful about what expectations you are building in your process. So they made vanilla. Cool. But then they made BC. The moment they made BC, they successfully built an expectation. Now there are going to be classic servers for who knows how long, because the expectation has been built. The moment they decide to cut the line, which obviously will at least be after Wrath at this point, then there's going to be upset about that because they're going to cut the line, because the expectation will be interrupted. So that's a problem. So, because again, the manager in me says, when do we cut the line? Because we have to cut the line at some point. We can't do classics all the way up to BFA.
Older favorites into the Mythic Plus rotation. And we recognize this is kind of a closing chapter, a little bit of a send-off to Shadowlands. As everyone gets ready for what happens next, what will come next, want to give a fun new challenge for everyone to sink their teeth into.
Really cool stuff for modern WoW players. I'm super excited about the gear upgrades that you're going to give me and the chance to go back and play some of those awesome raids.
There's a lot to explore. Very exciting.
For our next...
Hold on. See, Lord Haramont says the obvious thing. Why don't we just quit at Wrath? Because the game fundamentally changed after Wrath. Kata really was the ARR of WoW, right? That was when they overhauled everything. But the problem is every argument that Huthor just made applies to every expansion. And I'm not saying that to be mean or harsh or even to shut down Huthor's argument, because it's totally valid. He's right. WoW was different during Wrath. WoW was different during Kata. WoW was different during Pandaria. You remember Warlords? I'll go ahead and jump ahead a little bit. In Warlords, they had a completely new talent system, which worked completely differently from both before and later. In fact, the very talents themselves are very different, which changed the playstyle very much, and there's all sorts of other things. Blah, 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 right? So, when do they stop? You see my point? Legion was very different. We actually had artifacts back in Legion. BFA was very different. Shadowlands is very different. You get my point. So, the only thing they could do here is cut the line artificially at some point and piss some people off, or just keep doing it. Just keep allocating more people, more time, and more resources to establish more classic servers until every expansion has its own classic server. And you could probably see at that point why the manager in me, and I keep saying that, looks at that and goes, hold up. Hold up. But anyways.
Adventure in World of Warcraft. We're going to go back to Azeroth. We're going to a space with high fantasy. I mean, our fans of Azeroth for a long time.
I'm sorry. Shadowlands is the afterlife. I think we've got our high fantasy in. We also just went to space.
This has been kind of the foundation of much of the lore of WoW. So without further ado, let's watch the cinematic.
Okay, so I've actually seen this cinematic before. This is the only thing I've seen so far.
The world has been sundered. It cries out in pain. We must go to its aid. We entrust our ancestral home to you, the Watchers. Let the land slumber, hidden even from our own eyes. You will feel our return in the waking of the land. Then, you must light the beacon of Tearhold, lest the path home be lost to us forever.
I should probably mention, by the way, the Dragon Isles are not new. The Dragon Isles are mentioned as far back as Warcraft 2, and have been mentioned several times in several works since then. They've just never been shown on camera. In fact, the Dragon Isles were originally going to be in WoW. WoW Vanilla. Good showcases of passage of time. This is also congruent with lore. We do know that even though the Watchers and the Titan Forged in general are made of stone and metal, they can and do suffer the effects of age. It just usually takes a whole lot longer, like 10,000 years. Let me go ahead and add here that it is my firm opinion, even though I'm probably going to be proven wrong in a minute, that what actually causes this is the Cataclysm. Because the Cataclysm is the thing that caused a lot of Titan seals to be unsealed. The mist over Pandaria is the obvious example, but there's also the entirety of the Titan device that was shrouding Uldum, for example. Brief little background. As usual, the visual department is fantastic. I can't complain about that. You can see that the place is actually falling apart in several ways. There's lava in the background that's going places it shouldn't. The person on the throne is mostly fallen apart. The crumbling is actually causing bits of the architecture to not work correctly. Harder to unlock than to lock. Doesn't actually work correctly, etc., etc. Like, I could go down the nitty-gritty, almost frame by frame. Like that moment of just realization of what's going to be required of him there, you know? And we actually see how the physical toll it's having on his body, which is already aged and falling apart even as he's using it. Watch his hands. And yeah, there's also a jerkiness, a non-smoothness to his movements, but it's still well animated. It's fantastic. I love it. And Actiblizzard. And yeah, it's very Titanforged. This is so Titanforged. Titanforged have always been robotic in their mentality, and that means accomplish their imperatives at any cost. So of course he would do this. Now notice not only the usage of music, but also light and color. The reason I'm pointing this out is there's a tone being gotten across here, and that tone is uplifting. That tone is adventurous.
The world is healing. But her fate...
Open skies, filled with dragons, lush vistas, lots of green. You see what I mean? They're trying very hard to push that aesthetic, and they're doing a good job of it.
Together, we shall be Azeroth's protectors once again. Here, the new age of dragons shall begin.
So, for all of the other things that I have said, and Lord knows I have been negative about WoW and will continue to be negative about WoW, that cinematic was extraordinarily well done. It does everything it needs to. It gets across all the information, all the backstory, the Dragon Isles, the reason why the Dragon Isles haven't been present, even though they were planned to be, why the Dragon Isles were returned, the Titanforge being involved, yada, 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 yada. Now, who will be the antagonists of this one? That's a good question. There's a lot of questions that are still left after that cinematic, but that's good. That's how it should be. That's a good hook. Remember, WoW expansion cinematics have always been designed to be the equivalent of a cold open to a television show. They want to leave you enough threads to leave you interested to want to see what happens next. Now, from this point onwards, I haven't seen anything else, so this is all new to me.
Dragons!
Dragons.
This is so cool.
No one saw it coming.
No one saw it coming.
Okay, ha ha ha. For those of you not aware of the significance of that inside joke, this has been leaked for like a month. We knew it was Dragonflight a long time ago.
Carefully kept secret. But seriously, I mean, what did we just see there?
The awakening of the Dragon Isles, the return of dragons, the dawn of a new age. Right, we've seen Rathian searching for his father's legacy, searching for the Dragon Isles. There's a reason why he hasn't been able to find them until now.
The beacon going off. Is
I
that
know, right,
summoning
Jovan?
dragons?
It is removing the concealment that had hidden the Dragon Isles from the world, but also beckoning the dragons back urgently in a time of need.
I assume pretty good variety of locales within the Dragon Isles.
Yes, the Dragon Isles, as kind of standard.
I'm just gonna gush for a second. I just spent 2 months playing FF14, and while I love FF14 to death, it will never compare for me in the visuals department to WoW. Just little details like this one screen is all I need to say. I want you to really look at that screen for just a second. I want you to look at how much detail there is. I want you to look at how there's actual patterns to the way that the moss is growing into the vines, is growing into the ground. So yeah, I want you to look at the uses of color. You might say that looks green, but you're actually wrong. There's green, pink, blue, and yellow all in that grass, all being used to help conflict and contrast each other. As usual, the Blizzard art team is phenomenal and always has been.
For WoW expansion consists.
There you go, Monobrent, just for you. I didn't know this was coming. But again, you see the blues, the pinks, the greens, and the yellows, the same exact colors I was just talking about. We've got the animals present, we've got the vistas. You can actually see the tower in the background coming out of the mist. We've got trees on the back. Oh my god.
Of 5 zones.
It looks gorgeous. Look at that.
And a new starter zone that we'll get to in a second.
Can you talk a little bit about how the team found ways to thread
I like
the
her,
dragon aspect
fingernails.
throughout the environments?
The Dragon Isles are a place that is lush and primal, bursting with elemental energy. As Azeroth herself reawakens, those primal forces are expressed throughout the environment, whether it's magma activity, volcanic activity, whether it's the icy wastes of the Azure Span, and each one of those has a connection to a Dragonflight that we've seen before. And it's going to be an amazing place for the players to arrive at and explore.
All right, you know I'm
Agreed,
gonna ask.
Giga.
Yes, okay, so
Can I be a dragon?
let's start getting into some features here and what Dragonflight means for you as well as just a place. So first off, yes, we have an all-new playable race, the Drakthir race.
Yeah.
Okay, hold up. I haven't looked into details on the Drakthir, but right now, knowing nothing else, knowing nothing of details, knee-jerk, automatic gut emotional reaction, playable dragonkin, yay or nay, yes or no, good or bad, puke or joy, however you want to go with that. Honest question. Mr. Red says, do I think Eon is passionate about the game? You know what? I do. Now, let me be very clear. I speak ill of Eon, and I do. And I actually disagree with him as a game designer a lot. But to actually say just flat out that he has passion, I can't disparage him. I can't say he's wearing pink when he's not wearing pink, to go back to my oft-used example. I absolutely think he does have passion for the game he is the game director of. I think he shouldn't be the game director of that game. I think he should be the raid lead of that game, but that's my opinion. Okay, we've got a bunch of reactions. Let's go ahead and see what we've actually got here.
This is a draconic race, but dragons in Warcraft have the ability to take on a humanoid form.
What classes can they be?
They have unique abilities as literally a dragon. That doesn't quite fit any of our existing classes. And so what we're doing is this is not just a new race, but it's also a new class. You know, adding a new race to World of Warcraft, and not just an allied race, is something that we don't do lightly. But telling this expansion, this story, so focused around dragons, felt like the perfect time for it. So if you are a Drakthir, you will be the Evoker class. Drakthir can only be Evokers, Evokers can only be Drakthir.
Hold up. Now you're probably thinking, that's awful, and I could see why. Allow me to disagree. One of the things that I've agreed with since Legion is that adding new full everything options is not a good thing. If you've seen any of my FF14 streams, you know why I think that. There's too much. At a certain point, you add too many options and too much flavor. There's already too many classes, which have too many specs, which have too many builds. Adding another thing to that list is just ridiculous at a certain point. I've actually been of the strong opinion that FF14 should stop adding classes and just stick to adding limited classes. Now, this isn't fully doing that. This is a baby step, but it's the same thing they did with Demon Hunters, 2 specs instead of 3, for example, or 4, if you prefer. So I am leaning towards agreeing with what they go with here, but I think they should actually go even further in restrictions, my opinion.
And the reason why only a Drakthir could be an Evoker is that an Evoker is really combining the ability to call upon the magic of the different aspects with the unique physical gifts that a Drakthir has, the ability to actually take flight and do an Onyxia-style strafing deep breath over the battlefield, land on the other side, knock everyone back with a wing buffet, and then unleash your magical abilities.
Yes, please.
The Evoker has 2 specializations. They're a hybrid of either ranged DPS or healer, and they wear male armor. We figured, you know, with the new hero classes we've added over the years, we have enough melee, we don't need more of those. And also probably don't need any more leather wearers.
The raid leaders are gonna love you for that.
Exactly. This is definitely a hero class. And so that means that, you know, like the Death Knights before them or Demon Hunters, they will be starting level 58, and then they're gonna have a new starter zone. So they're gonna have a slightly different journey into the Dragon Isles as opposed to the rest of us that are sailing there from other parts of Azeroth.
Can you talk a little bit about the customizations? Like what is going to be able to identify my Drakthir character?
Basically anything and everything. You know, skin color, hair color, jewelry, tattoos, other adornments. You can make this character the expression of your identity. And as
Okay, I'm going to jump in one more time here. For those of you not aware, sometime, I think it was during Shadowlands or BFA, it's relatively recently, they went back and added in a lot of additional customization options for the existing races. And I was hugely in favor of this. In fact, I've actually mentioned that I went down the list to every single character that I had and actually adjusted most of my customization options with some of the new stuff because I liked it and I got to vary my stuff out a little bit. So the reason I bring that up is I actually have faith that there will be a sufficient amount of customization for this new race. I should probably mention one other thing just to get my opinion out there. Obviously, I do think that more customization in cosmetics in an MMO is a good thing. I tend to be a big fan of the pink Darth Vader concept, to put it simply. The most obvious and most common counter argument against that, and again, we talked about this a lot during FF14, is, well, what about PvP? And many, many, many other MMOs have already solved that problem, and that is having a separate flag for when you are in PvP combat, at which point none of your cosmetics show. Why is that relevant? Because it means you can actually see what the person is and what they're actually wearing, and can use that information on the fly to judge while going through a PvP match. This is something that's come up during Elden Ring, even, because I'm in favor of transmog for Elden Ring. But again, that's the kind of thing that you could have a flag where it doesn't show in PvP. You get the idea.
New zone, new class,
Yep.
new race. Well, tell us about some of the system updates or features.
So, of course, the new expansion brings with it, new systems, new features. I think in recent expansions, one of the things we've tended to do is really have these deep features that were closely tied to a specific expansion that would then get left behind as we moved on. And we've heard loud and clear from players that, it's kind of a bummer to start off every new expansion by leaving a large part of your character behind, by leaving a large part of your progression behind.
Pause. I have always been against this. I have never stopped being against this. During the FF14 run, we had a multi-hour discussion, like a 4-hour discussion on the concept of borrowed power. And everything about borrowed power sucks in so many ways. So let me just say that I think I know what's coming, and I'm hugely in favor of it if I'm right, because screw borrowed power.
So this time around, what we're doing is really pouring all of our energy into permanent revamps, overhauls, and improvements to World of Warcraft's core systems. Things like our progression systems. In this case, our talent system is something that we want to completely revamp. We want to take a look at our UI. We want to take a look at professions.
So with the talent revamp and the arrival of Classic, did you learn anything about how our talents work?
I think seeing a new generation of players play with those talents and work through those talent trees really underscored some of the things that, frankly, we lost when we shifted to the Mists of Pandaria style talents and beyond. A big piece of that was some of just the granularity, the feeling of getting a level and spending a point to customize your character to make yourself a bit better in some specific way. But also, that sense of hybridity that you could have. That's something that we've largely...
I'm sorry to keep memeing on this. She will not stop nodding. It's ridiculous. I'm going to go and give my opinion on talents really quick here. Again, we talked about this during FF14. I have always been a strong proponent of build gameplay. However, I'm also a strong believer that most of the vanilla talents and a good amount of the BC talents sucked, because there was either mandatory stuff which didn't matter, or stuff which was extremely boring. Getting a talent to increase your crit chance by 0.5% is not interesting. I've always been a big favor of mutators, or things that actually change how you build, right? Now, there are ways to make that relevant. There are ways to make that work. Star Trek Online is actually a good example of a game where actually changing your crit severity changes how you play, depending on the ships and beams and consoles you have. And yeah, one of the other discussions we had is there will always be a perfect build. But as a developer, and I'm willing to say that this isn't just my opinion, this is years and years of experience at this point. As a developer, you have to accept that at a certain point and say there will always be an ideal meta. It doesn't matter as long as enough other builds are still viable. As long as you can still do other builds and they still work, then we're cool, right? There's still an option for people to be able to play, a miracle worker ship which has nothing but beams and constantly uses abilities and aggro taunts in order to pull other ships to them, etc. And yeah, Elden Ring is actually a perfect example of this. There are ultimate meta builds in Elden Ring, but there's also the anchor build, and there's the double shield build, and there's the bleed build, and there's blah, 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 blah. So as long as there are enough builds that work, I'm fine with it. But anyways, moving on, sorry.
Lost. And so the new talent system avoids directly pitting player power throughput choice.
I'm sorry, what? Yeah, no, I read that correctly. So there's two things that jump out at me on this screen. I'm sorry to keep doing this, but you asked me to, so whatever. first of all, class spec. That's interesting. That's already interesting right there. I'm already liking that. Second of all, and this is much more important, look at the lower left. I know that's probably hard to read on the screen, but what that says is Resto Loadout 3. What that means is loadouts, which I cannot believe WoW hasn't done before now. But is to talk about STO again, is another thing STO does very right. A lot of games do this very right. The idea of actually saying, this, I want this prefab loadout saved so that I can just load that when I need this for X, Y, or Z. Very good change right there. You could reset your talents back in the day. I forget when they added that. I think that was a patch in vanilla. It cost gold, and it cost an increasing amount of gold each time you did it. And then they changed how you did it, and then they changed how you did it, and finally got to the point in now where you could change talents as long as you're in a rest zone. And that's where they're at now. These do look rather tiny. That's a lot of talents I'm looking at. I am sufficiently familiar with WoW to recognize most of the icons I'm looking at. It's interesting that we have a spread there, because if you look at the top of the left, I know those are hard to see, but just bear with me. In the very upper left, we've got very clearly a feral talent, and then a bear talent, and then a resto talent, and then a balance talent. And I'm not sure what I think of that, and that probably could need some, it's always in the details. This kind of stuff, the details matter, going back to that builds concept thing. So the fact that, they have all 4 specs representative in the druid tree makes sense. And again, hybridization, exactly. So we'll see. The details are going to matter. I'm not sure how that's going to line up. The other thing that calls my attention here is if you look down, I was actually about to point that out, Uthor, but if you look down, you'll notice that the Typhoon and the stamp icon, which is the third to bottom row on the left tree, there's little arrows pointing left and right. And I'm wondering if those are swappable things. Either way, we also see several different icons. So we've got squares. Those look a lot like abilities. That's rejuve. That's generate rage. That's swipe. I recognize these abilities. But then there's circles. And you'll notice, so if you look down the resto, again, over in the druid tree, if you look at the third column from the left going down, there's rejuvenation, square. Below that is swift mend, I think. Square, and then below that is the rejuvenation icon again, but that time it's a circle, so that's probably the modifiers, if I were to guess. We'll see more details hopefully in a minute, but yeah, I'm sure some of those are passive, some of them are not. And again, I'm curious of the arrow things. Oh yeah, we've also got the diamonds on the left. This is just purely guesswork. I'm sorry for jumping in so early. I'm sure they explain this, but what that looks like is set piece. If you get to, so there's a usual thing where if you get so far into a build, you get this thing. Borderlands 3 does this, for example. So I'm guessing if you get down to this point, you gain rebirth, right? If you get down to this point, you get stampede, which is what those two are on the left, for example. That is presumption, but I'm not sure elsewise. All right, so sorry I keep pausing this, but you wanted me to do a deep dive. And we're doing a deep dive. So I noticed the multiple lines thing too. Actually, that's a good point. So if you look at the very bottom middle of the druid tree, you see that requires both a bear ability and a resto ability, which requires a bear ability, which also requires a resto ability and a bear ability. So that looks hybridy. And if you pay attention, if you kind of zoom out the camera a little bit, you'll see that even though we've got our 4 lines, we actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines, which makes sense. Because, we've got feral and bear, and then we've got in between. We've got bear and resto, and we've got in between. We've got resto and balance, and then we've got in between. Now, I wonder if this is what the arrow stuff comes in. This could mean a lot. This could be a huge sea change in how customization works in WoW. And you know me, I've always been hugely in favor of build gameplay, so I'm actually pretty excited about this. And you're absolutely right, Lord Harriman. I didn't even see that. So yeah, if you look down pretty much the far bottom left of the druid points, you'll notice that they have stomp there, but stomp only required 1 circle talent. It doesn't require the feral talent in order to get down there. So it looks like only 1 line is required to unlock the further one down below. And I suppose we could have seen that over in the resto tree too, because they have the bottom resto ability in the bottom middle, with only requiring the 1 chain going down to it. So it looks like you only have to have 1 connector. Interesting. Sorry, did someone ask about Elden Ring? I must have missed that question. Where's that? I don't even see the question. I thought I was reading chat. Obviously, I'm not.
This is directly against those sort of utility hybrid choices because we know that there's always a right outcome there. And we also understand that, there's a lot of strength in the flexibility of the modern talent system to let players customize their talents for a particular encounter or for dungeons versus PvP, and we don't want to lose any of that.
So John, UI?
Oh my God. Yes, I got this 30-inch monitor trying to keep track of where I am on the map, all my buffs, and over here, what's going on in chat. It has literally made my eyes go like this. So,
And you're not alone in that. We've made a lot of incremental changes and additions over the years, but really this is a revamp, this is an overhaul. And so we're excited to really modernize the look and feel while staying true to the origins of World of Warcraft. At the same time, we're not looking to take away the sort of power user customization there. Add-ons are still there if you want them, but we want a much better default out-of-the-box experience for all players.
Pause. I'm actually in favor of that too. One of the things I've said many times is that WoW, when we review it, will get many positives for its mod support and not many positives for its UI, because its default UI actually kind of sucks because they relied so heavily on the add-on support. So the more add-on modularity that they add to the baked-in game is good by my book, as long as they do it right. So, shrug.
New and old alike.
and can I reduce elements, remove elements? If I want to explore the world and see the beauty of Azeroth,
When it comes to specific elements, as much as possible, we want to let players choose what to show and what to hide so that they can control it themselves.
You mentioned professions. I have a critical question about this.
Go on.
Can I wear a chef's hat?
yeah, I knew it.
Our approach to professions in Dragonflight is really all about delivering on fantasy and identity as a crafter. And so if you want to be a serious blacksmith, if you want to be a great leather worker, we want to deliver the ability to...
That's no. One thing I've actually said for several times, geez, Lord. One thing I have said many times is that professions in WoW kind of suck and always have. They've dipped into being acceptable, but I would never have, in no expansion, would I ever say that professions were actually a good addition to WoW's existence. One of the things they could do for that, and this is admittedly just a band-aid, is copy off of FF14, make professions a full experience, a full class, in short, just like they are in FF14, which might not be a bad idea. I wonder if this is them dipping their toes into that concept.
invest time and energy into that, become a master crafter, be able to make items that are in demand, interact with the community. One of the big pieces that we want to do to support that is a new work order system to have a bit more.
So I've actually heard about this because this is Guild Wars 2. Just copy paste, and I'm okay with that. I've said many times I want Blizzard of Borg back, and I mean that. But for those of you not aware how this works, over in Guild Wars 2, you can actually, there are work orders that you can put in. So essentially you could go to the auction house and buy something that isn't actually on the auction house yet by placing a work order. Then someone else can go in and say, oh, hey, and then actually fulfill that work order, and then the transaction happens. A good system that I honestly am happy that they're borrowing from Guild Wars 2.
Means than just spamming trade chat all day. But if you are someone, you're not yourself a blacksmith, but you have a bunch of mats and you want them forged into a great sword, you can put that work order up, list your mats, offer a commission, and a skilled blacksmith can come along and make you the weapon of your dreams.
I think we left out one thing though. You can be a Drakthir, go to Dragon Isles. Can I have a dragon?
What's the fantasy of dragons if not soaring over the lands? And so we're really excited to introduce a feature that we're calling dragon riding. It's dynamic with, everything from momentum
Oh yeah, speaking of other things we're stealing from Guild Wars 2.
to dive bombs, the ability to, just sort of build that speed up and feel the world rushing past you in a way that should be much more exciting than traditional flight that we've made available in the past, but that's also available for players through a customizable dragon mount right from the start.
So this is a skill you learn over time, right, to become an awesome dragon rider?
Yes, you'll be able to sort of upgrade aspects of your flight, but you will have this new form of flight from the start. And the Dragon Companion that you have is, of course, very thoroughly customizable, which is a new thing for us for mounts.
And that's another thing that they're taking from Guild Wars 2. And again, none of that's a dig. But for those of you who have ever experienced mounts in Guild Wars 2, you know why I've been so harsh about this. Guild Wars 2 has done mounts better than any other MMO ever. And it's good to see someone finally taking some of those ideas and running with them.
This is not just a generic dragon that everyone has, but a drake that is yours. You know, what do you want its scales to look like, horns, the shape of its head, other attachments, armor pieces, and more. Take your pick.
This is so cool.
So the Dragonflight expansion is going to see players leveling to 70, going to the all-new continent of the Dragon Isles, which consists of 5 zones, 4 standard leveling zones, and a new starter zone for our Dragthier class, as well as a range of systems revamps, such as a new talent system, an overhaul and update to our UI, and an entirely fresh look at professions with more depth than ever before. Also getting around the Dragon Isles is going to come in the form of dragon riding, which lets you customize and upgrade your own mount so that you can fly in a sense from the start. And of course, as with any new expansion, we have a new set of dungeons, a raid, and much more to come.
We also have an alpha that will be starting up in the future.
Check out our website for more information, and keep an eye out for those opt-in signups if you want to help us test out Dragonflight and give us even more feedback to make it better.
We do have a deep dive that follows this, so please stay around. Classic players, we haven't forgotten about you. You could probably guess where we're gonna go next. One of the all-time favorite expansions for World of Warcraft.
So we're just gonna skip this. WoW Wrath Classic. Woo, there you go. That's what that was.
Hi there. Welcome to the Dragonflight Deep Dive. I'm Steve.
As I said, we know Wrath. It's WoW Classic Wrath. I've already given my thoughts on that. I have nothing new to add. WoW Wrath Classic. Cool. Moving on.
Denuser.
And I'm Taryn Gregory. Starting it off here, we're going to talk about the setting and the story of Dragonflight.
We've got this great expansion, exciting pre-render trailer that everyone just watched. So let's talk about the setting for Dragonflight, the Dragon Isles.
Dragon Isles have been known for a long time in Warcraft history as a mysterious place where the dragons came from long ago, but we never knew much more than that.
We're going to this place that is kind of the broodlands of all the Dragonflights, the place where they nested, where they built their civilization. The Dragon Isles was the center of the Dragon's kingdom when the world was young and the mortal races were just starting to form kingdoms of their own.
Ooh, Magister.
But when the Legion invaded for that War of the Ancients, that sundering that resulted from the explosion of the Well of Eternity, broke the world.
Literal sundering of the continents of Azeroth.
And because of the breaking of the world, that magic kind of drained away and the land went dormant. So they had to leave the Dragon Isles behind. And as we saw in the pre-render, they left behind some Titan Watchers to look over the land. And when someday they hoped that elemental energy would resurge once again and draw the dragons home, reestablish their kingdom.
And that's when the message goes out to the flights and they feel it in their bones.
Now it's the time for the sky to light up with the colors of the aspects once again, and for Alex Straza and the others to come home. But the land has changed a lot in all these thousands of years they've been away, and some very old threats have awakened as well.
We're looking into the culture of dragons as they exist in Warcraft.
Dragons, as we know them today, were very different in the early past, the early history of Azeroth. They were much more primitive, much more savage, what we now know as proto-dragons.
And then some of the dragons were empowered to become the aspects. The green flight, red flight, blue flight, bronze flight, black flight, each with unique powers, each with the ability to protect the world in different ways. These pillars of draconic power appointed to defend Azeroth from threats within and without.
Dragons used that power both for good, in the case of most of the aspects, but also for nefarious reasons, in the case of the Black Dragonflight led by Neltharion, who would become Deathwing.
And what we will find in Dragonflight is that some of these ancient divisions run deep. And so it begs the question, where do we go from here? If this is an opportunity to reclaim their legacy, to be the protectors, as the cinematic mentioned, that they once were.
To do that, they're going to need the help of our heroes, our players, to come to the Dragon Isles with them and face some of these reawakening challenges, because it's not just that this land is peacefully waiting for the dragons to return and reclaim it. There's those old enemies that have awakened as well.
Yeah.
One of those being a race of kind of elemental half-giants, the Jarradin.
The Dragon Isles isn't just populated by dragons or just by the Jarradin. There's also many other occupants here in the Dragon Isles that have been here either just recently or for a while, including a fan favorite coming back, the Tuskar.
That's going to be awesome. We've got other cultures there as well in the Dragon Isles. We're going to find out about a civilization of centaurs that predates the ones that arose on Kalimdor much later.
And some of our favorite characters that we've seen over the last few expansions, such as Rathian.
And whether he's ready to step up into a leadership role, or if there are other alternatives out there that would be better suited to the job of being the aspect of the Black Dragonflight.
I think one thing the players are going to be really excited about this expansion is the new playable race, the Drakthir.
That's right.
And this is something that Neltharion, before he was Deathwing, before he went full crazy world dragon, that he put into motion.
Neltharion saw those primalists that were kind of breaking away from the aspects and what they wanted. And so in those first experiments, he took the essence of dragons, their strength, their nobility, their wisdom, and he combined it with that scrappiness, that adaptability that the mortal races had. And he wanted to use that to create the ideal soldier in his mind, the Drakthir. Exploration is really one of the key themes of this expansion. We're going to be going to this ancient place that the dragons left behind long ago. So we've made these huge zones with all kinds of places to delve into and find little treasures and little secrets tucked away. It's going to be a lot of fun for players.
What are the oracles doing? Oh, never mind. That actually makes sense. Never mind. I withdraw the question.
Players to be exploring these landscapes.
And there's so much architectural history and how clearly aspirational was the kingdom of the dragons and how it lost so much. And the themes of trying to return to that, to try to find your legacy, to try to figure out who you were before everything went awry. But there's questions, thematic questions of what does it mean to be true to your legacy? Are we going to repeat the mistakes of the past?
The dragons have had to learn those lessons just like the mortal kingdoms have had to. And I think that's one of the reasons why the dragons see this now as the time that they have to return and they have to step up once again as protectors of Azeroth. We're helping the dragons because the dragons have helped us in the past too. So by using the Explorers League and the Reliquary together, that allows us to delve into some of that history.
And when I look upon the Dragon Isles and all of its visual splendor, I get so excited for the prospect of a truly Azerothian adventure alongside Caligos, along with Rathian, Ebonhorn, with Ysera's daughter Marithra, as each one of them is trying to find their own flight. I am taken by the exploration and the potential for adventure and just new horizons within this world.
There's going to be old stories from that time past, that history that only the dragons knew for the longest time. We're going to be able to explore that.
It really feels like just a breath of fresh air.
So now we're going to turn things over to some of our colleagues who will take you on that deep dive into the locations and the features of Dragonflight.
Hello, I'm Stephanie.
I'm Josh.
I'm Jackie.
And I'm Gary.
And we're part of the teams that are building the first two zones that you'll encounter in the Dragon Isles, the Waking Shore and the Onaran Plains. The very first zone in Dragonflight you're going to come to is the Waking Shores. It's wild, untamed land. It's waking up around you too, and the elements are just going crazy.
The art team again has hit it out of the park.
You'll see like a lava mountain flowing in through the beach, giant proto-dragons swooping down, gobbling up members of your expedition.
We have such rife opportunities to show elementals rising up because of the crazy magic that's flying around.
The one of the things I love is just how you get to the Dragon Isles, right? So you're gonna get on your boat in Stormwind or Orgrimmar, and the first thing you do is sail between like the dragon ruin architectures. The boats come right alongside each other. You can jump from one boat to the other and just start causing havoc on the other faction's boat.
For those who
Why?
love PvP, this is a great opportunity for War Mode.
It's free for all out there. It's gonna be great. But it's okay. There's an innkeeper on the beach so that if you're in that situation and you don't want to be in war mode anymore, you can just hop out right there.
The Reliquary and the Explorers League are working together.
The Horde and Alliance are sending an expedition together. It's not the military, it's not the soldiers. This is the scientists, the settlers, exploring this new land. So it's a lot more optimistic tone.
One of my favorite things about the Waking Shores is the Red Dragonflight, led by Queen Alexstrasza, the Lifebinder. They have the mandate of nurturing and protecting all life, which means Horde and Alliance, Gorloks, trolls, everybody. So they take that duty seriously. When the Horde and the Alliance come to the Waking Shores, they want to be there to help guide the people through the new land and welcome them. But they're not the only one in the Waking Shores.
We have the ancestral home of the Black Dragonflight there too, which has fallen on tough times since Deathwing's descent. And so Rathian's coming over to the Isles with us.
Do you mind if I skip this? Is that cool? This whole thing is just, here's this zone, and I don't care until I get there. And here's this zone, and I don't care until I get there. I'm more interested in more core stuff, like the new class and the HUD design, which is these two sections over here. Oh, and profession, so... I'm sorry, I'm not trying to sound negative, it's just I have nothing to say about this until I'm actually playing it. I'm sure I will be gushing, maybe, I don't know, hopefully, once I actually get there. But right now you're just telling me there's this zone and it's cool, and I don't care, because I'm not in the zone. So hang on, let's jump ahead a little bit here. Right about there. There we go.
Hi, I'm Jake.
I'm Andy.
I'm Kali.
And I'm Graham. And I'm really excited to talk to you guys today about the Dracthyr Evoker, our new race and class coming in Dragonflight.
We're here to talk about not only the Evoker, but also dragon riding, which is our exciting expression into the exploration of the Dragon Isles.
We knew with a dragon-themed expansion, we wanted to let you play a dragon. Not a big dragon, Alexstrasza size. That'd be tough to fit into raids. I'm sorry, Jake.
Okay.
I know.
Fine.
But a draconic humanoid. So the Dracthyr, created by Neltharion.
And like our other hero classes, you get to choose if you want to start on the Horde or Alliance side on character creation.
So let's talk a little bit about the Evoker, the class they can be. What's unique about it is because the Dracthyr are created by an aspect, they have the ability to wield the magic of all 5 Dragonflights. So Evokers can take advantage of red magic and blue magic and bronze magic.
And to show that, we created a visual
The reason I'm pausing is because that has interesting implications in the lore. And I'm not sure if they intend that or not. Because dragon magic, sorry, let me rephrase that. Aspect magic doesn't actually exist in the strictest sense of the word. Aspect magic is actually Titan magic. Now that's fine. The aspects have always been agents of and empowered by the Titans. They actually were originally proto-drakes that were crafted into their current forms based on their elemental prototypes within the elemental plane. So, okay, cool. But the implication there is that the Dracthyr were from before they were drained. Most of the actual dragon, most of the aspects and the modern dragons have had all their powers ripped out of them because of the fact that they burnt it all during the Cataclysm, trying to make sure and permanently destroy Deathwing and his connection to the Dragon Soul as well as to the Old Gods. So what we have now is actual Titan magic that was sealed away and is now being opened up again. Interesting. Now, I already know that they're already retconning at least one thing, which irritates me. We'll get to that later, but we'll see what they think of this.
what we call a prismatic effect. This prismatic effect is basically the coalescence of all their energy as they channel it into whatever spell that they're going to cast. You have a red magic spell called Pyre. So when you shoot it out of your mouth, it twirls in the air with all 5 of the Dragonflight's magic as it turns into the red spell before landing on your enemies and exploding and hopefully burning them.
I'll take that one.
Getting that vibe across that they use all 5 was really important to us, but we did want to make sure that each specialization focused on 2, because casting 5 different colors gets a bit messy. So their damage dealer specialization, their first of 2, Devastation, mostly focuses on red and blue magic. Red being very fast and explosive, burning everything with Pyre, whereas blue is more focused and overwhelming. You can shoot a beam of energy out of your mouth to disintegrate one single enemy in front of you.
There's a healer spec called Preservation. The healer spec is going to focus mostly on your green and your bronze magic. So your green is going to be evocative of the Emerald Dream, your growth and your nurturing spells. And then you have your bronze magic, which is going to be more timey-wimey. So you get to heal a wound faster.
So in addition to the visuals and the animation, which all make you feel very powerful, we really wanted the player to have a physical connection to the cast. We have a new type of spell called Empower, where when you actually hold down the button on your keyboard, it charges up the spell. The longer you charge it up, it might do more damage or hit more targets depending on the spell, but it gives you this really physical connection. And
That could be a new game changer if they expand that to other classes. So some of you may or may not be aware that something they introduced, Blizzard actually innovated this some time ago, this was years ago, was the concept of charges. Many other games took the concept of charges and ran with them, FF14 being a good example of that. Charges is where, let's say you have X ability. It has 2 charges. So you start off, you've got 2 charges, and then you burn one of them. The moment one is burnt, the cooldown starts, but you still have another charge. So in other words, there's no uptime wasted as long as you are charging something, as long as one cooldown is going through, right? And this completely changes the dynamic of how a lot of classes can work. Charges was a great change. They used it to great extent in Diablo 3, for example, but also in WoW and in FF14, like I just mentioned. The ability to hold down a button in order to actually build up a button and then release it could be a similar game changer, because one of the things, they actually mentioned this very briefly earlier, although they didn't touch on this. There's 2 general lines of thought when it comes to class design in a game like this: front-loading and backloading. Front-loading is you use an ability and then it has a cooldown. Backloading is you charge up a cast time and then shoot it. Charging could be another way to do backloading design. It could allow you to try and spend that time in something that hurts and hits and does, and you can time that with buffs and weave that in and out of proper usage and blah de friggin' blah. The benefit of the former is the player has more control of the specific moment in which the DPS goes out, but the benefit of the latter is it's almost universally superior if it's not interrupted. Because obviously anything that interrupts that cast time, like for example, you have to move to avoid a mechanic, is going to interrupt your spell, and all that time that you spent charging up the spell, in addition to moving to the location, is now lost time in the metric. So it'll be interesting to see if they do anything with this.
Control that's new for World of Warcraft, and I think is feeling really, really good.
We have some great animations. Thank you, Andy, your team.
You love it, Andy.
You feel physical when you're casting your spells.
You can actually fly around the battlefield and cast while you're flying.
Raining fire and death from above. It's great.
In addition to the gameplay, though, another part of feeling draconic is looking like a dragon.
Well, we talk about dragons breathing fire, but you know what's actually fire?
What's actually
These
fire?
customizations.
Oh my goodness.
But no, they're really, really
They're
cool.
awesome.
Because you have both your draconic form and your humanoid form. And the customization options for both of them are amazing.
They're very good.
What about color? Just tell me you
tell
can
us about
change
the
the color.
You can do a lot of matching. So your Visage form can have scales that are the same color as your Drakthir form.
But my favorite, super favorite part of customization for the Visage form, hair.
Yeah.
Because I can actually do this in game.
Yeah.
The tech is here.
We finally did it.
As players make their way through each of the areas of the Dragon Isles, they'll partner up with the Dragonflights to move through the air as they've never done before. You'll notice I did not say flying, because flight has a very specific meaning for World of Warcraft.
Yeah, it does.
And we're talking about something new called dragon riding.
And as the players are honing their dragon riding skills, they're going to get to see all new animations that go along with the different look and feel of the drakes.
We're aiming to shake up movement with this new system, providing players with a deeper immersion with forces like momentum and gravity.
We knew that for Dragonflight, we were going to have the opportunity to show players a whole new set of Dragon Isle drakes, completely unique from all the other things they've seen in World of Warcraft. And so we wanted to come up with a movement system that would add that sense of physics, weight, and gravity, like you were mentioning. We knew it was going to take a huge team effort, not just animation, but it was going to take effects. It was going to take the engineering team, who we rely on heavily, and that combined with some new animations really helps to lend that feeling of physics as you move through the air.
I'm just going to interrupt really quick because I've been paying attention for every shot they've shown for this. It is copy-paste how griffins, specifically hippogriffs, work over in Guild Wars 2. Now, that is fine. That's not a complaint. I'm just giving you a parallel if you happen to have played Guild Wars 2 and happen to have done the chain to get your griff.
Ways that you haven't before. And the icing on the cake is going to be some really cool effects that we've added on top of all of that. So for example, when you start hitting, maximum velocity, you're going to see contrails coming off the edges of the wings. And then as you do your rolls and spirals, you build up more and more speed. There's going to be some screen effects on the display to indicate that you're reaching maximum velocity, which really adds to the overall kind of immersion and sense of reality.
As players make their way through the Dragon Isles, they'll discover new cosmetic options to fine-tune their Dragon Isle Drake's appearances. Things like snoots, horns, tails, elusive Dragon Isle Drake armor, and more.
Can I have spikes?
Definitely.
Okay.
We want to provide players with all new skills to play with, as those who can use their momentum can reach higher and higher heights, and bring on new, more difficult challenges.
We just have so many new, gorgeous options to choose from, and I'm just so excited for all of them.
I'm excited for the whole thing. I mean, it's been a lot of fun to work on, but I can't wait to actually get in the game, play it with you guys.
I can't wait. I can't wait to fly around Dragon Isles. It's gonna be great.
Next up, you're going to hear about the talent revamp and the UI changes coming in Dragonflight.
The game geek in me is actually very interested in.
Hello, my name is Brian.
I'm Crash.
I'm Jay.
And I'm Laura. We are very excited to share we are finally revamping the WoW HUD UI.
And it is also time for a major revamp to talents and specializations.
I have a big question for the group. How long do you think it took for us to finally revamp the WoW HUD?
My guess is like 15 years.
Close, 18 years.
18 years.
18 years.
Wow.
You know, technology has changed a lot since we made the UI back in 2004. Now you have like bigger monitors, and we have better dev tools to work with. So it makes sense to have the revamp right now. Also, if you look at the game today, the art evolved beautifully over the years. And if you look at the HUD looks like it got frozen in time.
So when we approached this, we wanted to create a layout experience that players could customize, move things around, adjust it to fit their needs.
Add-ons today, they do a lot for player customization.
The downside is that not everybody uses them. It's about time that everybody has the opportunity to use them, that they become.
You want to bet this is another step in making this available on the Xbox? No, I'm dead serious. Think about that for a second. Having a fully customizable HUD that's available by default helps console players who may, or almost assuredly cannot, get mods.
Become a part of the base UI.
Yeah, and we are working very closely with our user research team to make sure we are hitting the goals that our player needs.
It allowed us to add new functionality to improve accessibility.
Which I'm in favor of, by the way. As long as you don't get rid of add-ons, I'm in favor of it.
In a lot of areas, and on top of that, we are going to be improving the art.
Yeah, so the art update, it's a big part of this project. The UI that we have today has a lot of charm and
ask FF14 players, Tom, and I have no idea.
For 18 years. So with that in mind, we want to respect the players who really like the current UI, but do a modern take to it. Removing the clutter and giving more visibility for your gameplay. So the new minimap, it looks bigger, and the health bar is also much bigger. If you look at the action bars
Textures
and the
are
bottom
cleaner
menus,
too, and
they
higher
have
resolution.
less frames, and it can really open up your gameplay, so you don't have a lot of your UI in front of you. And of course, we want to find iconic pieces from the current HUD, but we want to bring it back in a nice way. So we for sure updating the Griffins. They look so nice now. And the Horde, don't worry, we got you. We're going to have your version as well. So let's talk about the edit mode.
We are putting a mode in that will let players move various HUD elements around on the screen.
So I'm able to move the mini-map, say, from the right corner all the way over to the left corner.
Yeah, I was actually looking into this when I was looking into FF14. Near as I can tell, please correct me if I'm wrong on this, the way FF14 works is you group, you nest, I think is the term, you nest buttons. So let's say you have button, let's say you have your typical DPS rotation, which is 3 buttons. So what you do is you bind that to square, and when you hit square, what actually happens is you pull up another quadrant, another 4 buttons. And from there, you actually hit whichever button the specific spell is. Then you cancel out, and then hit another button, and you nest in and out of your spells in order to do that. I don't know how that feels to play that. That sounds terrible to me. But I've seen several people and several videos of people doing that with regards to that. I actually need to AFK very briefly. I do apologize. Here, have some Morrowind music. I will be right back. The only time they did that job and people whined, and I'm going to say it that way, and the result is they never did that again.
If I want to bring my action bars from the bottom and kind of put them more in the center by my character, those are all things that I'll be able to do?
Absolutely. And each of those different components will have various sets of options that you'll be able to work with. They'll be able to save it, edit it, copy it, name it. Also, it'll remember which spec you're in. So if you're someone who jumps around a lot, as you switch, it will switch to whatever HUD layout you have for that spec.
This is an ongoing project. We're going to keep working on it. So we really want to hear back from you.
A project that we're all excited about that we've been collaborating a lot on is something that's pretty UI intensive, and that's the talent system.
It hadn't changed in a long time, like you said before, and we really started with how can we have players have more choice over what their character has?
As you level up, we give you a new spell or a new ability, something that kind of makes you stronger, but it's determined by the designers. We decide the order.
Yeah, we started looking for a system that would give players a much wider set of options.
And after looking at all those things, what we really returned back to was the idea of trees. But it's actually 2 trees. We have a class tree that offer different class utility, and then we have a spec tree that is focused on performing your role, whether that's damage, tank, or healing.
Can I just jump in and say that I personally am super excited about having trees come back. There's a big nostalgia hit for me.
As we said, we have these 2 trees because we feel like picking a specialization is a really important part of your World of Warcraft character now. And so we want to make sure that when you choose that, it kind of affects the tree in some way.
Yeah, as soon as you open your talent tree, you'll see something new. The class side will have some abilities filled out for free, just kind of start.
So this confirms what we were theorizing about earlier. You can see right there, once you have 8 talent points in a tree, you get the automatic ability on the left.
Starting you off in that spec you've chosen, but then you'll have your first point.
It's interesting, too. It looks like there's just a reset all button, which is fine, but that feels a little bit Band-Aidy, if I might be so bold. What I mean by that is there's no functional reason that they couldn't just make it so that you say, oops, I hit 1 talent wrong, and rewind that 1 talent when you're in a respec zone. Instead, it looks like you have to rebind everything, which is fine. I'm not complaining. It's just interesting that they went that way with it.
Point to spend in the class tree, which could be something related to that spec or role, or it could be something from elsewhere in the class.
There's a lot of things that we can do here, and part of that is encouraging players to perhaps make combinations that they've never really been able to see in the game before. This is an opportunity.
Agreed, Huthor. I was going to mention that too. This is really beta-y. This is, yes, we do Raskor. There's actually going to be loadouts in the lower left there, which is good. But yeah, this looks very beta. I imagine this will change several times as we go. Now, it looks like we're seeing our first arrow thing in the lower right there. That's also true, Javan, I am presuming.
A lot more art and fantasy.
Actually, I'm going to read that really quick. Okay, that's not really any different than the current.
In the actual talent UI itself.
You have seen that a lot through most recent expansions, but not at the base UI.
We want you to be able to tinker with it. We want you to be able to make a lot of changes at a lot of times and not necessarily have to commit. The power really is coming back to the player. It's not something we want people to feel locked into.
You'll also notice they keep just showing Druid. In fact, just Druid Resto.
At the same kind of frequency that you do now.
Yeah, the old school players, when you see trees this time, just think, yeah, I'll go from my raid night to my arena match and figure out what I think is the best for both of those.
And that's a process we want to make really fluid. So we're building a save load.
So it's hard to read, but that looks exactly like it should be. The loadouts in the lower left, you see there? And also, did you notice 2 very important things? There's an import, so you can just grab someone else's thing, and a share, so you can share it to someone else. So that's actually cool. I'm down for that. Oh, also balance. Check it out. It's another tree. Holy crap. But yeah, import and share, and it looks like, just as a glance there, there's probably a reasonable limit on how many you can have. I mean, right there, there's 7. Hang on, 1, 2, 3, 4. I can count 7 loadouts, and the option to make more, and that's good. Reasonably speaking, we're probably not going to want more than 10 loadouts, but having lots of loadouts is a good thing because you never know.
Feature that lets you create your build, name it, save it, and then load it up very quickly and freely.
Talents were really about the breadth of options. We've made all these different cool things over the years, but when are they at their coolest? It's when players can hold the building blocks of what can make up their class, their spec, and put them together in a way that works for them.
So these are really cool features
Damn it,
that we've been working long and hard on, and we're very excited about them. And it's just an early preview of the things we've been doing. We can't wait to see the reaction that you have to them, and please reach out to us and let us know your thoughts on them. And next up, we're going to talk about professions in Dragonflight.
You know, Icy Veins is just going to have a thing. Actually, in total sincerity, WoW has always supported the ability to run script in-game. What I mean by that is you could go to Wowhead right now, pull up the script for a specific item, paste that into the game, and then you will have a functional tooltip for that item in your chat window in-game. I'm actually 100% in favor of the idea of being able to say, XYG3 lowercase y colon 66532 and just import that into the game, and that's actually your build, right? That way you could go to Icy Veins and grab a build and just dump it in there. I am in favor of that.
Hi, I'm Joanna.
And I'm Eric, and we're going to talk about our plans for professions in Dragonflight. Professions have been a staple of World of Warcraft forever, and they've seen lots of really cool incremental updates over their life. But
I disagree with that sentence.
for Dragonflight, we want to do something a bit different. We really want to rethink professions and figure out how to make them part of your identity as a player, if that's what you want.
We really want to make sure that professions feel fun and relevant across all levels of gameplay.
That brings us to our first update, something that we're calling crafting orders. If you want to have something crafted for you, but you don't have the skill or the right profession to do it for yourself, you can have it crafted through a crafting order. You can basically browse any of the recipes that can be crafted, pick the one you want for yourself, and then you include some or all of the reagents needed for the recipe.
Let's look at that HUD really quick, shall we? There's a lot of new stuff there. That's interesting. So let's go through this a little bit, shall we? Okay, so we've got the recipe. The recipe uses reagents, but one of the toggles is use best quality reagents, which implies that either we're going to start adding quality to reagents, which is something FF14 just got rid of a couple of months ago. But either that or you can have a completely different type of reagent. So WoW has always done columns of reagents. There's copper, and there's copper, tin, bronze, silver, gold, iron, true silver, and then thorium, right? And all those are the same column. That's all ore. That's all gathered from the same general thing. So it's possible we'll be able to use, something from a column of things. I'm not sure. I'm still speculating, of course. We have an inspiration thing, which is new. We have a resourcefulness thing, which is new. There's our crafting skill. That's normal. There's the difficulty. That's normal. But what's really strange is in the lower right, there's a thing called create all, which I'm not sure what I think about that one. So there's kind of a thing like that already in WoW, but it's it's a batch order. And it doesn't do anything to make it less boring and less dull. It's just a batch order. I'm not sure where they're going with that one. And yeah, like I said, Huther, there's a lot of question marks I have here. We've also got the ability to track the recipe, which I think I like that idea. So again, if we're to push crafting more into the forefront, being able to say, I need, for example, 5 Draconic Veils, 1 Awakened Frost, and 20, whatever the hell it is, Sacrifrage. Being able to have that over there in your quest log, your quest tracker, and saying you're still missing one of this thing gives you something to look for while you're out in the world. That's good. I like that. Most of the recipe thing looks exactly the same, so I guess I have nothing else to add to that. Moving on.
Including ones that only you can get your hands on. You can find someone in person to do it right in front of you for you. Or you can also go to an NPC and using an auction house-like interface, send the order out. If you're doing this, you can pick, do you want to send the order to any
Hold up.
house-like interface.
The significant things there's 2 things that jumped out at me there. The first and most important thing is post to guild only, which that implies a lot. I think he's about to talk about that. But the second thing that really jumped out at me is on the left you see provide optional reagents which amplify power, which once again implies, similar to the previous thing, that you can add other stuff or add higher quality stuff in order to advance it to the point where it's actually a better resultant.
Send the order out. If you're doing this, you can pick, do you want to send the order to anyone, sort of a public order, or do you want to only send it to your guild, or to a specific other player? Maybe it's a friend who will be able to craft the item really well for you.
If you are really dedicated to your craft, you're gonna be the best at what you do.
One of the coolest things about this is the item you had crafted can also be soulbound. In the past, you could only get your hands on crafted soulbound items by having that profession yourself. Now anyone can have them crafted for them, which is really neat and really expands the number of items that we can provide that are really powerful because everyone can have them crafted.
That feels like a band-aid that I'm in favor of. But that feels like a band-aid, and I'm not sure I like the direction there. We'll see what we think of that.
Crafting order system.
This is also really cool because it means as a crafter, you can start building your client base. People are gonna come back to you.
So there's our quality right there. Quality rating, 4 of 5. Interesting.
To get certain items. Maybe you're the best at making it, or you always throw in a little something extra. You're also gonna be leveling up your profession. It's gonna be really great.
So the first time you go to craft, you're gonna notice a lot of different things, but probably the biggest is the introduction of quality, both to your crafted items and your gathered reagents. Quality works in a pretty simple way. If you craft
So there's another thing that shows the optional reagents thing, just to show that off while we're there. Nothing, no. Sorry, I was just glancing. Curious.
something that's a higher quality, it's just gonna be better. For a piece of gear, that probably means a higher item level. If it's, for instance, a potion, that might mean a more powerful effect at a higher quality.
And we're doing a lot of new things in the UI. We've put a lot of work into it to make sure that the professions feel really special and unique.
And another thing you might notice in the crafting UI that's new is the introduction of stats, specifically to your professions, both crafting and gathering. And this is another sort of major input into quality.
Oh, that makes so much sense. All the people who are nodding are just FF14 mains.
Probably the biggest source of your ability to craft items at a higher quality is through crafting specializations. We've had crafting specializations in the past, as far back as original World of Warcraft. With Dragonflight, you can go out and earn specialization points in a whole bunch of different ways. So maybe you find an old book on a bookshelf in a ruin somewhere, or a hermit in a cave who can teach you a little bit about your profession. So let's say you're a blacksmith. You might decide that first you want to become an armor smith. And the more points you spend in armor smithing, the better you're going to get at crafting all armor.
This also means that if you specialize one way, other people in your guild may specialize in a completely different path. So this means that your guild could have several top blacksmiths and everybody is providing something unique and valuable to the team, which is really cool.
Now that reminds me of another update. We're actually adding crafting tables to all the different crafting professions. We're gonna take those and we're gonna put them all in the main city of Valdrakken. And you're gonna go in there and you're gonna get to see all the different players crafting their items at their cool crafting tables.
Yeah, it means you're gonna walk into the city and you're gonna see like all these alchemists huddled over here, and you're gonna see all these blacksmiths over by the forge. There will be other players filling orders or grabbing orders. There's gonna be a whole new crafting area that's gonna make you feel really part of the world.
It just seems like a much more lively area than it has.
What I'm hearing there is order halls, but for crafters, which I'm actually in favor of, depending on what they actually do with them. Let me just jump in here. What they need to do is they need to add crafting content, not just crafting. Let me explain what I mean by that. If you play a druid exists. It's a class, you can go level it, but there's content in addition to that you can do as a druid. There's quests, there's dungeons, there's raids. So if they add crafting content, if they add crafting dungeons or crafting quest chains, or maybe like a crafting talent tree or something that actually allows you to do as a crafting, then I'm actually super in favor of that, because as I've said for many years, literally decades at this point, WoW's crafting has always been kind of bleh. So.
As in the past.
What I'm most excited about though is the gear. We're introducing new types of gear for every profession. And when you go to say mine a node, you're actually gonna just switch into that gear. It's gonna be really great.
You're not gonna have to carry that stuff around in your backpack anymore. There's actually going to be dedicated slots for each of your pieces of gear. But I'm a numbers guy. I love progressing. All pieces of profession gear will have those special stats that we mentioned before on them. And as you get your hands on better versions of the gear, it's really going to help you get better at your profession.
I can't wait.
Thank you for tuning in to the Dragonflight Deep Dive.
You've heard a lot.
That's everything. That's everything. That's the whole video. Okay, so that was the video. I told you it was going to be a minute. Let's shuffle back up here. Oh, wow. That's just a thing now. There we go. Let's get some music going. Now, we're not actually done yet because we've got interviews to go through. Now, let me make sure. I think this is all repeat info of what we just saw. Yep, I had that ready just in case that we weren't going to watch the video. Now we're going to start looking at our interviews. So, some questions here. They have been laying the groundwork for the expansion since before Shadowlands. Duh, that's how that works. The zones were not particularly themed after each specific flight, like in Dragonblight. That makes sense. However, each zone has powerful links to a particular flight. The Dragonires are very vertical, which makes sense because flying is going to be enabled from the beginning. The dragons were forced to leave during the Sundering when the elemental energy waned, ? But recent events have caused it to surge, cough, cough, the cataclysm, and the time to reclaim their homeland has come. There'll be a lot more exploration than in Shadowlands, but the zone order will remain the same for everyone on their first character. Telling a linear storyline is not easy utilizing the Legion and BFA choose your zone order methods, which is true. What that means is they're probably focusing... Let me walk that back. They're hypothetically focusing on more MSQ and less regional. I'm actually in favor of that. I've said for years that WoW should focus more on MSQ content. I like the way that WoW does regional stories, as my very Lorecraft series is showing zone by zone. But I do think that you can have an MSQ and a regional, so I'm in favor of that. Each individual zone will have a lot of freedom. That doesn't tell me anything. The content encourages exploration. You've already said that. There will be new reputations, which will unlock new stories as you progress. Raise eyebrow. The team... That sounds like 5.1 to me. The team thought of the new race early in development. They realized none of the existing classes fit the theme of the race very well. The new talent system was a way to address constant new systems without adding new systems every expansion. Borrowed power. The new talent system is a way to return to the roots. Whatever. The goal is to allow maximum customization and the ability to be an actual hybrid. We actually discussed hybrids and the trap, the hybrid trap during the FF14 run. I don't know if they're even aware of that trap, because WoW's actually already dealt with that trap back in the BC and Wrath era. We'll see what they do with that going forwards. The talent system will easily allow you to... as you level up your dragon riding, you'll be able to reach certain locations and do things you couldn't do with normal flying. Raise eyebrow. They wanted to create a sense of aspiration for unlocking areas that you could see but couldn't reach with simple flying. I'm curious how that's going to come out. Profession revamp. Have work orders, yada yada yada. Nothing new there. The new work order system allows... The Horde and Alliance are working together in Dragonflight, even though there's still war mode for some reason. I get it. I get it. I do. It's just... Can we just push the PvP out of the story? Finally. Been waiting 18 years for that. The Dragonscale Expedition is the name of the Horde Alliance Expedition. The team is isn't perfectly happy with personal loot. Interesting. Tier sets will remain. Team will improve on the Great Vault, which actually was a good idea. Bronze Dragons will allow us to see unique stories involving timelines. That sucks. And Wrathion is a big part of the story. He has never seen these lands before. Cool. Scrolling up. That makes sense since he's only a couple years old. Next interview. I've got several interviews to go through here. The Dragon Isles are large, so Dragonaut riding was added to allow a unique and easier way to navigate in a place designed for dragons. Flying hasn't changed much in 17 years, so it was okay. Guild Wars 2, got it. Flying will not require a Pathfinder achievement, thank God. The Dragon Isles was chosen for this expansion because it's one of the few remaining places on Azeroth yet to be explored, along with the South Seas, while we're on the subject. The Evoker class came about as they realized that Drakthir was too unique to be accessed by the current classes. Don't agree with that. A Threads of Fate leveling system for alts will be utilized in Dragonflight, and Blizzard's looking to making more systems account-wide. Yes, more account-wide equal good. I could say that for every MMO I play, and it would just apply across the entire spectrum. All MMOs, more account bound. Blizzard also plans to provide a more in-depth open world experience. We'll see what that means. If they take the tiered fates system from Guild Wars 2, I would actually be in favor of that. The events, in other words, the metas. There are no borrowed power systems in Dragonflight. Instead, a revamp. Good. The team saw the release of WoW Classic that had much of the strengths of the old talent system still work today. I mean, talents are talents. In fact, I think Blizzard technically invented talents all the way back in Diablo. The team is taking a when-it's-ready approach. No release date. Good. You will get a new talent point every level from 60 to 70 with the new system. The Dragon Isles will let you explore themes while feeling fresh. We'll see centaurs, trolls, Tuskar. The Evoker may be slightly different, may work slightly differently with the dragon riding feature, but they will be able to utilize it as well. The Drakthir Evoker might feel limiting because of single race 2 specs, but the customization and unique spellcasting make them extremely unique and engaging. Please play them. Please, please, please. The starting zone for Drakthir will tell the story of why they're waking up now and their place in the story. Cool. The UI, I mean, let's be honest, every starting zone since Wrath has been pretty legit, so... The UI for customizing your dragon mount is based on the Barbershop revamp and Shadowlands. Good. The new UI will be customizable based on spec, and you can swap based on role. Also good. That's a system they implemented back in Legion, and have been expanding ever since. That's awesome. More interviews. PvP gear. No. I'm just joking. I get it. PvPers exist. Probably somewhere. Maybe. Over there in the corner. PvP gear will be largely separate acquisition. Halinka says he is not upset if a few trinkets from PvE are competitive for PvP. The plan for Dragonflight is the additional PvP item level. It does not work in the outdoor world. You will need to upgrade the PvE item level of PvP gear through Conquest. Okay, that makes sense. The trinket set bonus will stick around for PvP in Dragonflight. PvP set bonuses are not coming. Cross-faction will be available for creative PvP. I'm actually in favor of that. Random battlegrounds will continue to have the faction divide. Not in favor of that. There will be faction-specific end-of-season rewards, even with cross-faction. Okay, that's why I was like, why is that being stated? The class section of new talent trees will be interesting for PvP. It might cause the player to choose between defensive or utility. Honor talents will remain as they are now. Rated solo queue could come on later, but would likely only allow you to queue by yourself. Yes, that's what a solo queue means. The team wants to add more battlegrounds in Arena, but has nothing to announce at the moment. That actually makes sense. There's a lot of... If you actually think about it, there are a lot of battlegrounds in WoW. Honestly, probably too many, so that tracks. The team wants to incentivize people to do War Mode at launch. Good frickin' luck. They don't want to incentivize players grinding points in War Mode. Did you just... The Dragonflights are not covenants. They are separate factions. No player power attached to them. Cool. We also know that Evoker... So for those of you not aware, every class has a color attached to it, which is extraordinarily useful for both HUD, UI, and chat reasons in WoW. It's actually something I really wish FF14 would pick up on. But for those of you know, Warriors brown, Druids orange, etc. We have the Evoker color. It's a very deep sea green. It is actually hex code 33937F, specifically, if you happen to care. So that's cool. Hang on, I've got some more. Alright, so here's a specific interview with Eon, which is apparently pronounced Eon. I've been calling him Ion for years. Borrowed power! Vomit! No, okay, hang on. I don't expect all of you to have seen my FF14 run, because it's a 2-month run. But allow me to say that we had a 4-hour discussion on borrowed power during that run, because there's a lot to be talked about there. Because the core reason for borrowed power to exist is, and always has been, we want you to have something cool, and we need people to buy the new expansions. There has to be new features, but power creep. So, this was their solution. But the problem is borrowed power was always a surface level solution. It was actually a dumb solution from word go when they first started it, all the way back, arguably in Pandaria, but they actually started prototyping the concept in Warlords. Borrowed power, as implemented, sucks. But borrowed power can be done in a different way. So here's my big idea. I call it playgrounds, okay? The concept of a playground is there's this other part of the game. It's a separate zone or separate system or separate sequence of zones which have their own dungeons and their own raids, and they follow different rules. The borrowed power is over there. And the whole point of the usage therein is you get this cool new stuff that doesn't really have to conform to the balance meta. We don't have to balance it for PvP. We don't have to balance it for PvE because we don't care. It's the playground. Go have fun. Go make a white mage who can nuke something in the face for several hundred thousands of damage. Go make a tank who can live forever because they have 3 separate cooldowns they can cycle through, etc., etc., etc. If you're paying attention, yes, this is based on concept of Boja, which is a playground in FF14, which they need to take even further, in my opinion. And yeah, basically think Mechagon, but take it to the next level, and that's kind of where I'm thinking with this. This is a method in which you can have borrowed power, but it's not really borrowed power because it's more like it's isolated power. It's over here, in this little thing in this other corner, and you go and again, this is important. You have all the fun stuff to do, and you have to have fun things to use that stuff to do. There has to be content. There has to actually be that kind of enjoyment factor. Otherwise, it's just a sandbox with a bunch of cool toys. You need more than that, right? Yeah, actually, Torghast came up several times when it came to the concept of the playground, because Torghast, allow me to say probably the most unpopular thing I've ever said about WoW, Torghast was awesome. Torghast was legit. There were problems with Torghast, but just actually going through and gaining the new temp abilities and just building your own build on the fly based on which random stuff dropped was really fun. And so doing something like that in a more substantial manner, or giving more content, more meat to actually be able to experience that kind of a thing, sounds awesome. So I loved it because I played a Demon Hunter when I was doing Shadowlands. For the reference, Demon Hunters get all sorts of fun stuff in Torghast. But anyways, point remaining, right? So I bring all this up because the problem of borrowed power is something that you do have to address. It is something that has to be discussed, because you can't not have cool stuff in your expansion. You're just chopping yourself at the knees for sales and for player interest. But you can't just keep giving players new cool stuff, because you're going to have a power creep problem. I mean, there's already a power creep problem. So, you know? So this is my big solution, the playgrounds concept. I just wanted to share that really quick. Now, hang on. Vandalia says, Vandalia's making a joke. Got it. I don't think anybody will care about Wrath, personally. I did all of Torghast 2-player, me and Pax, consequently. So, here's what Eon has to say about borrowed power. I'm never going to get used to Eon. The team reflected on the borrowed power system of the last few expansions and admits that giving players power and taking away didn't feel good. No frickety-da. As they thought of a new way forward without borrowed powered systems, they realized the only talent system used to fill those gaps by giving you something every new expansion that would not take away in the end. Which is funny, because that's effectively just giving up on the borrowed power concept if you're really paying attention. If you're actually paying attention, this means that they're just going back to talents and just adding more talents each expansion, which is just the power creep problem. So they're not actually solving the problem. They're just giving up on the problem. Now, that is a solution. That is something you can do as a designer. Not sure I agree, but that is one of the solutions. The goal of the new talent system is to grow it and with further expansions, with new layers and rows. What did I just say? They want the new talent system to be sustainable for at least a few expansions, and at what to do at that point is an issue to solve then. Literally admitting that they're kicking the problem down the road. Reputation hasn't changed much or evolved since vanilla. That's not true. It actually changed substantially in BC. The path to Exalted and rewards were not well structured or visible. The aspects of Renown solved some of these issues, and the team wants to adapt this to endgame structures in Dragonflight. Building Renown will open up perks with reputations that will not necessarily be through structured weekly quests, but more open-ended objectives. That sounds terrible. Reputation Renown will not unlock more player power except through gear rewards. It will instead provide cosmetic rewards and perks. That sounds awesome. One of the biggest traps they keep falling into, and have since BC, is trying to put actual gear and actual upgrades behind reputations, which was never a good idea from the beginning. Rep should have always been cosmetic. I actually raised almost every rep to Exalted in WoW because I'm insane, but also because I liked the cosmetic rewards that came for that, the mounts and the skins and the titles and all that fun stuff. Anyways, crafting is the other big thing. Yeah, I know, right? FF14 certainly leans heavily on the get nice cosmetics things, and it works. We all want our fashion souls, right? So, crafting. The team doesn't necessarily want gold to be the cost of entry for building a profession like it was in Shadowlands, and also every other expansion ever. Specializations will be the main way of finding a niche in a profession to separate yourself from the rest. We still need more detail on that. Hopefully there'll be some in some of these. Not only can you specialize in a certain skill of a profession, such as armorsmithing, but specific crafts as well. Hardcore crafters will eventually be able to make everything, but it will take time. That sounds a little bit like cooking was in Pandaria, which actually I'm in favor of. How many of you remember that? You know, the way of the wok, the way of the noodle, or whatever. What were all of them? Hang on, I actually don't remember all of them. Yeah, cooking was actually good in Pandaria. It's the first time I maxed cooking since vanilla, I think, actually. Here we go. We had the master... so it was the way of the grill, the way of the pot, the way of the oven, the way of the wok, the way of the steamer, and the way of the brew. I liked that. I thought that was a good move, so maybe they're going back to it. And everything was farm fresh. I liked the farm, too, in WoW, in Pandaria. That's a good question, Rax. Unfortunately, I'm limited in my interviews here, so we'll see what else we got. So, players who don't want to engage with the system will still be able to utilize professions, but the goal isn't to force players to interact with the system. To keep crafted gear relevant, I'm just going to say this as bluntly as I can, you shouldn't be able to craft gear. No, I'm bar none. I firmly believe that crafted gear should effectively not exist, or if it does, it should be extremely de-incentivized. I think that about FF14 as well. I think you should be able to craft cosmetics. I think you should be able to craft buffs, like buff food and buff potions and stuff like that. I think crafting should be a thing for helping groups, helping dungeons, and helping mythics, because the mythic cycle and the raid cycle are an important aspect of an MMO's life cycle. But the gear should come from those things. The crafting should help you get to those things. So again, buffs, items, the little, etc. Yeah, absolutely. In any MMO, Mike Romano, in any MMO, I know that you can craft, for example, beams. I actually have beam torpedo, and not disruption cannons all maxed in STO, and I've never used it ever because it's a stupid system. But the point remaining... The point remaining that I think that you should be able to craft all kinds of cosmetic stuff, and I'm 100% in favor of making all kinds of cosmetic stuff you can craft, but freaking lean into that, you know? Anyways, so, To keep crafted gear relevant, let's go back to the actual interview question here. The team wants there to be more options equivalent to mythic rating level, raise eyebrow, but players will never be able to go to an auction house and buy sets of gear at max item level. It will involve BOP crafted items or recipes that are obtained through higher level content. That doesn't solve the issue, you moron. Players will be able to use their own BOP crafted items to get gear crafted by other players by utilizing work orders. I get what you're doing, but you're just adding another step to turning everything BOE. Whatever. Legendaries, as they've existed since Legion and Shadowlands, are not going to be in Dragonflight, so pause. For those of you who don't know what that means, there were crafted legendaries in Legion, and it was actually kind of a good system. It wasn't a great system. They were kind of low-tier legendaries, but they were legendaries, they were useful, and more importantly, most of procuring them wasn't just get some stuff and make it, it was a quest chain. It was kind of similar to how FF14 does relics, but substantially less terrifying. I actually got several legendaries when I was going through Legion, basically just for fun, just because I wanted to see the story of a given arc, so that was kind of cool. Now, it wasn't as expansive as it should have been, but if they were to really expand that and make it so that you actually can craft legendaries, and each legendary has its own chain, that sounds kind of awesome. But, whatever. Let's get on with it. So those type of legendaries were there to fill gap left by the removal of talent trees and tier sets. That's not to say we'll never see legendaries again. Thematic items that drop, such as Sylvanas' bow, Raid's eyebrow, will still be added where it makes sense. Dragthyr, that's true, Mascor. I've done several of those chains. Dragthyr will be able to perform the basics of dragon riding and their dragon form from the start. The unlocked abilities earned over time will also have to use their dragon companion, but will in their visage form. Drakthir can glide and get a little bit of lift in a manner like demon hunters, but cannot fly outside of the Dragon Isles in their form. Dragon riding is not replacing mounts. There will still be plenty of new ones to collect. A feature of dragon riding that Eon brought up, I hate the way he pronounces his name, is learning to instantly port back to a quest hub after completing a quest. Okay, pause. One of the things you might not be aware of is that Cataclysm is when WoW actually became a good video game. Now, I'm willing to back that up when we get to the review, but what I mean by that is it's when they finally decided to actually start using modern game design systems and mechanics rather than leaning on all of the old classic stuff, aka the stuff that was the Bronze era and the Silver era of gaming in terms of MMOs. One of the ways that they did that, it is spelled I-O-N, but they have pronounced it Eon. They pronounced it in the video we just watched, so that's why I'm correcting myself. Anyways, one of those features was the ability to, for example, turn in a quest immediately. Like, if you finish a quest, the quest is flagged as completed, and the pop-up shows up, and someone gets to you on the comm and says, hey, what's going on? And you could actually turn in the quest right then and there without having to fly back to the hub. There's also a lot of quest flow things that are relevant to that, which I'm not sure what I think of. But hang on, it's even worse. Because they're mentioning that a feature of dragon riding will be allowed you to do this, like the whistles of Legion and BFA. So I'm not sure what I think of that either. So the way that worked, in Legion there was a thing you would eventually unlock called the whistle. And the whistle you'd pop it, and you would immediately warp back to the nearest flight path. Now, that was actually kind of awesome. It was another form of fast travel. But the problems with that were much more complex than I feel like going into right now. So the long and the short of it is I'm not sure what I think of that, and I suppose we'll see. Yeah, it was like a mini hearth. There's like a 2-minute cooldown. You can go to the nearest. And it was always the nearest. It was a direct one line, what is the closest flight path to you, whether it's up, down, or in any direction, doesn't matter. And given how Legion was a very vertical expansion in several areas, that actually was relevant. It also had to be a flight path you've already unlocked. That was part of it, too. But anyways, they will be implementing methods to address people who are prone to motion sickness with the dragon riding system, yada, yada, yada. Player housing. I'll get back to this one. There's a full interview on this one, but the team wants player housing, but it's a big undertaking to get it right. If it's to be implemented, it would have to span multiple expansions and take a lot of time. Housing will not be coming in Dragonflight. So I'm going to go ahead and put on my I have a lot less sympathy for you hat really quick here. One of the things that I have spoken of many times is in defense of developers of games, because I understand just how much time and effort and money game development takes. We actually brought this up many times in FF14, where there are elements where, for example, there's something where, I wish they should do this. I know they can't. It's still bad for the game. I'm still giving it a negative, but I understand why they're doing it. Here's the thing. WoW has Actiblizzard at its back, and it's about to have Microsoft at its back. The excuse of time and money doesn't apply anymore. So, if your big argument is it's going to take time and money, then do it! Archaeology. Archaeology needs a fresh coat of paint. It will not be getting anything new at the launch of Dragonflight. The focus on profession updates is the main professions currently. The previous iteration of Archaeology will not be returning. The team wants to incorporate something different for PvP pet battles. Okay. Does anybody PvP pet battles? The changes will not be made at launch to the current pet battle system. There will be mid-range classes. That has nothing to do with anything. There will be seasonal mythical dungeons. Eon wants to release some of the talent trees to the community before Alpha. Dragonflight will launch with 8 new dungeons, but only 4 will be available for Mythic Plus at launch. The other 4 will be added in at Season 1. The goal is to have 4 dungeons and 4 dungeons from previous expansions available for Mythic Plus every season, so players don't farm the same gear every season. I actually like that. Not only because I think WoW has a systemic problem of ignoring and abandoning its own content, but for the exact reason that he just mentioned. it's a good way to vary it up so you don't always have the same dungeons that you're hitting every time you go with a particular Mythic Plus season. The way that could work, and this is all asterisks, so who knows, but the way that could work is if they make it so that it's a random grab bag of previous Mythic dungeons, and then you go ahead and have your new dungeons. That would be cool. Shadowland dungeons will not be included at the start because they're too recent. Cool. Okay, next. Scroll up, scroll up, scroll up, scroll up, scroll up, scroll up. Next, interviews. I have several interviews here. This is with Steve Danuser. I actually don't know how to pronounce his name. So, this is purely lore stuff right here. The Stone Watcher seen in the cinematic is named Koronos. Koronos will be present on the Isles, and we'll see him while questing and get to know him better. Good. Generally speaking, whenever they do stuff with regional NPCs, it tends to be kind of awesome. No, really. Even in BFA, which was an expansion that pissed all over my grave, the fact of the matter is that most of the regional NPCs were kind of awesome, even on both sides. So, with it. One of the biggest themes in Dragonflight is legacy. Raise eyebrow. The dragons outside the main 5 flights will be part of the expansion. Good, because for those of you not aware, there are actually an enormous quantity of dragons that do not belong to the 5 flights. After all, the 5 flights were just the ones that were established by the Titans. There are lots of other dragons that are not part of the Titan dragons. There'll be lots of localized threats like the gnolls. There's a lot of gaps in the Chronicles narrative about the Dragonflights, and throughout the story we'll find that many of the proto-dragons did not feel like being infused with the Titans was a good idea. Why not? It's the Titans, they're cool. There are 4 dragon leaders and the Primalist movement that are on par with the aspects, each one embodying the elemental forces that they embraced instead. This movement was those that rejected the Titan's gift and wanted to remain, quote, unfettered. These philosophical differences led to war, as they often do in a setting called Warcraft. The dragon aspects defeated and imprisoned these primal incarnates years ago, but they're in danger of being released now that the land's waking up. The dragons will have to reflect on what it means to be tethered to cosmic forces and the Titan's order magic, which is what Arcane stands for, should they renew these bonds or find a different way forwards. Now this one irritates me. This is a straight-up retcon in a bad way. The fact that Nosdormu knows he will transform into Murazond at some point weighs heavily on his mind, and he's having trouble seeing the time ways right now. I actually pointed out that specific sentence to PAX last night, because everything about that sentence is wrong. Nosdormu knows he will transform into Murazond at some point in the future. No, he won't. That's not how time travel works in this setting. That was an alternate Nosdormu from an alternate timeline that was crafted by himself in order to transform into Murazond, caused by the old god's interference with his particular timeline, creating the infinite flights which went back to create further new timelines. That's all dumb. It's also all done. We did that. We chopped it off. Boom. Done. Furthermore, he then says he's having trouble seeing clearly the timeways right now. Of course he is. He lost his titanic power. It's gone. It's kind of hard to see when you're blind. Moving on. The blue dragonflight is scattered, and Calicos' story will revolve around returning to the Isles, and not many of them are there. How will he rebuild his flight? That actually makes perfect sense, because the blue... Oh, God, the blues have been through some hell. There was actually a bit of a massacre of the blues, and there's not many left to begin with. Well, that's a good question, Action Man, but no would be the answer to that. Murazond was always alternate Nosdormu. At least that was the intent at the time. And also, ironically, made perfect sense if you look at the way that they do time travel in general, even with Warlords. The problem is I think they're going to retcon that because there's already been hints, even before this expansion was announced, they're going to retcon that, so whatever. But yeah, they're going to rebuild the blue flight. Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. The green dragonflight story will follow Marithra as she tries to take up the mantle of Ysera, which also makes sense because Ysera died way back in Legion, which only was relevant in Shadowlands. That was actually a cool quest, I'll give them that one. The Black Dragonflight story will revolve around Raytheon Ruthurion, however the hell they pronounce it, and his questionable choices will affect his future with the flight. No comment there. We will also see the relationship between Raytheon and Ebonhorn grow. Good, I liked Ebonhorn. Let's see more of him. The Dragon Scale Expedition, oh, we already saw that, patch 9.2.5 will show some of the changes that have been going on in Azeroth while we're away. So this is a story thing. That implies to me that they're going to do some quests leading up to the expansion, which makes sense. That's probably what they call pre-patch and what I call the acclamation patch. But that does imply there's actually going to be an event, and that's cool. Or at least it could be cool. WoW is very hit or miss with their pre-expansion events, so we'll see. The Acclamation patch will also tell the story of what's going on back in Azeroth and how the two factions have been faring with new leadership. Uldaman is getting a revamp, of all things, and it has the right amount of nostalgia while setting some new light on it. For those of you not aware, Uldaman has already had a revamp. There'll be new sections of Uldaman to explore as Alex Strasza sends us to find the discs containing the knowledge of Keeper Tyr. That actually tracks, although Tyr never actually made it there, but the Watcher and Keeper who made it there could have actually taken the discs of Tyr there, so that makes sense. Scrolling down a little bit. So then we have another interview with Eon. There was a great war between the dragon factions around the time of Galakron's fall. It's an odd time to place it, but it still lines up with what we already know. The aspects we know were the victors of the war, but with the loss of their power during Cataclysm and the reawakening of these primalist foes, they are less positioned to fight them off this time. They need our help. There will be major villains in Dragonflight, but it will feel like Mists of Pandaria where it's unclear who they are at first, and I hope to God they bring the power level down for once. Don't try to keep one-upping yourselves. God! Khadgar will be joining us, about time. For those of you not aware, Khadgar was a major character in Warlords, and a major character in Legion, and then he saw the Horde versus Lion stuff, and he pieced the hell out, because he was having none of that. It's one of my favorite moments of all of BFA. So, it's nice to see him again. Anduin's future in the story will have some questions answered during the Acclamation patch. He has been changed forever by his experience with domination magic. Yeah, that'll do ya. And will likely be stepping down as King of Stormwind. Oh my god, please, please don't put Gen Greymane in charge. Oh my god, don't make Greymane king. Oh my gosh, okay, you missed everything, Lineruth. The factions will retain an uneasy armistice going forward, with groups that want peace and others that don't. They will still retain separate control of their land, so you won't see orcs running around Stormwind anytime soon. Pity. There's also going to be a significant endgame across all 4 zones. Cool. The zones are much larger than the zones of Shadowlands. Cool. The zones have more depth and open space. Flying. Normal amounts will be usable on the ground, but not at flying at the start. Sargeras' sword in Silithus is just a big splinter at this point. The story will be focusing on the Dragon Isles, but the old zones won't have any significant new stuff in Dragonflight, because screw the old content. The Evoker will bring a new style to range DPS the same way Demon Hunter brought it to melee. I already talked about that. The team is playing with ways to make Drakthir's Visage form usable in combat as well. Good. You'll be able to get 1 talent point per level, blah 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 blah. Many of the Covenant abilities will be reintroduced to talent trees, duh. Shadowlands will be adding to the... Shadowlands will be added to Chromie time. I was like, that was a confusing sentence. So that's actually good, too. That's good. For those of you who don't know what that is, that's the thing where you just get to, when you're leveling an alt, you just get to pick which expansion you want to level in. That's a really good feature, by the way. It's actually one of the best things Shadowlands added, mechanics-wise, to the game. So, hugely in favor of that. The old UI texture options will not be available to toggle with the new UI. That actually makes sense, too. Crafted tables will be required for making important items. Already knew that. The team would like to allow cross-server trading, but there's a lot more work required to make sure that there are no exploits or problems. Why would you reopen that? You closed that down for a reason, and it was for a very good reason. I literally talked about that when we were talking about FF14, because FF14 allows cross-server trading. Anyways. Next interview. Scroll down. No Dragonflight Covenants in the expansion, meaning there are no quests locked behind different Covenant systems or anything like that. The team is still talking about what to do with alts for leveling, but they want players to choose how to level them rather than something specific as the Threads of Fate. I didn't like the Threads of Fate, but I was in favor of it being an option. Threads of Fate was extraordinarily boring, actually. This includes dungeons and side quests throughout the zones outside of the main campaign. And more focus on MSQ is something I'm always in favor of. Dragonflight does not take place that long after Shadowlands. Yeah, that makes sense. Quite frankly, it should have actually happened in lore about 3 years ago. Drakthir don't have progression to their personal form or flying in Draconid form, but they will be able to jump off and dive, which is very Demon Hunter. As of now, the Drakthir are always in dragon form in combat. We already mentioned that. There's more customization to what was shown in the video, so this is what was mentioned earlier. Players can expect to have different torso sizes, bulkier or slender. The armor can be customized in the barbershop. That's on the mounts. The Drakthir forms will show shoulders, tabards, belts. That's an interesting combo. The Visage will show all of your armor. You can customize face shape, snout, etc. Evokers will be playable in the Acclamation patch. that's actually interesting and good. There will be 4 different dragon companion body types. So this is for your dragon riding. There will be the Protodrake, we know exactly what that is. The Velocidrake, that's the Pterodax type, which was introduced back in Pandaria. The Wyvern Drake, and the Drake Drake. They're actually, that's their term, not mine. The Drake Drake, which is probably just straight up Drake. The Velocidrake has wildly different snout customizations, including rhino beaks. Drake customizations will drop from many different sources. There's an overwhelming amount of unlockable options, as there usually are. Drake customizations are completely cosmetic and do not affect in any way. Good. Work orders will let players who don't have professions... Yeah, we already talked about that. Specializations will have trees to work through over time. Tree points will include the option to increase crafting speed. Oh, hey, check it out. Crafter talent trees. This is something we actually talked about earlier and they never codified. Oh no, absolutely. I actually mentioned that earlier, Rax. 100%. This is definitely them getting the game ready for consoles, which I'm okay with as long as they don't get rid of add-ons. Please, please do not get rid of my add-ons. Wow. So, specializations will have talent trees. Talent trees will include the options to increase crafting speed, increase inspiration, which is the chance to make dupes. There you go. So that's what inspiration does. Crit crafting, which allows you to craft a better quality, etc. New players will start in... I guess that's it for crafting. I want to know more about that. New players will start in Exile's Reach and use BFA zones as their 10 to 60 before going straight to Dragon Isles. That's still stupid. You should still use the Chromie system for new players, you morons. The team is still discussing how to address soul shape for the future. Yeah, no kidding. Dragon riding is currently all available to the Dragon Isles. Interesting. Valdraken will have an iconic area much like the top of Wormrest Temple, where the dragon leaders will be in all their dragon forms. Valdraken is the highest point of the Dragon Isles. It'll be fun to jump off and soar to different areas. There will be new docks in each faction capital for the expedition. They haven't forgotten about heritage armor and are now that we're turning Azeroth, there's room to tell those stories. Pause. For those of you not aware of what heritage armor is, it's actually a good idea. The way it works is you have to have a race, and that race has to be maxed reputation with their faction, you know, as in Blood Elves, Silvermoon. And then you get a quest chain. And this quest chain is lore, it is story, it's got some decent meat and content to it. And at the end of it, you get a unique cosmetic suit that is for that race. Most of the heritage lines have actually been pretty awesome so far, so I'm super in favor of that. 9.2.5 is probably going to be the acclimation patch, Icefrost. Do not quote me on that, but everything they're telling me indicates that to be so. They can change their minds, of course. Lost my place. The team views archaeology as a content offering now over a profession. The team are discussing new race and class combos and no confirmation of duck mounts as of now. Scroll down a little bit. They hope that the Drakthir, they hope to lift the Drakthir race class restrictions in the future, but it's just a hope at this point. Every person's Drake will never look the same because of customization. The UI for customization is the barbershop. The team doesn't want to repeat those same issues that arose from Threads of Fate. Okay, that's all cool. The acclimation event will be 2 weeks. That's it. The Uldamon revamp will be available during acclimation, as of level 60. The Dragon Isles are located in northeast Azeroth. That's where they always were. The Dragon Isles are the biggest continents Blizzard have ever made. Tyrande will be rolling this. Why? Why do you keep making Tyrande in these expansions? Quit it! Quit it! We will learn more about Galakron. There's not much to tell there, but sure. A few small changes will take place in Kalimdor and Eastern Kingdoms. They will involve the presence of certain NPCs and the evolution of the Forsaken. The ideal length for the race to world first around 10 to 11 days, but the balancing for top guilds is a real challenge. Why do you care? There are no Azerite or artifact power systems. Yeah, we already knew that. There will be no dragon forms for druids. Aww! Also, that's not true. All you have to do is play a troll. Blizzard will continue to control the time frame of certain unlocks. I have never been in favor of that, and I remain not in favor of that. The story of Dragonflight will be more traditional and less high concept like the Shadowlands. I mean, it was just the afterlife. The team is trying to return to a more grounded adventure with core high fantasy concepts. Raise eyebrow. There will still be cosmic adventures in the future with great threats. That sucks. Dragonflight's story will not require you to have played Shadowlands to unlock it. Or to understand it, excuse me. I don't know why I said unlock. Yeah, what is Tyrande? Boring! They keep trying. They keep trying to make her relevant, and God, they keep failing. Let's think about this for a second. So she wasn't in BC. She wasn't in Wrath. But she was in Cataclysm. and she was in Pandaria, only briefly, admittedly. She wasn't in Warlords, but then she was in Legion, and then she was in BFA, and then she was in Shadowlands. And for 3 expansions in a row, they have failed to make her a character. Ugh. God. Let me check something here. Yeah, no. What could they do? Well, they could make her a character, or they could give up. Those are always the options. Make a character. It's the same stuff we've been doing with the Trek Rewrite. Either make something better of it, or you abandon it. God. Who knows, Draxia? Who knows? I know nothing. I'm an NPC from Zelda 2. Now, I have some questions here. Sorry, no, I actually have questions, singular. It's from Trihexia, which says, do you think we'll finally get some answers on Elune? Well, I mean, Tyranda's there, so you know what? I would actually legitimately believe that we will get more info on Elune than Tyrande in Dragonflight. I agree, Maiev is more interesting than her, and they actually did better stuff with Maiev, despite her relative lack of screen time. That's whatever. Yeah, when we review WoW, Tyranda's probably going to be multiple negatives, and I'm just going to call that the Ranjit effect. And those of you who get it, great. And those of you who don't worry about it. Okay, that's it. That's everything. So, final thoughts here. So I'm going to summarize my final thoughts of all of this in one sentence. Net positive, not good enough. Almost everything they're talking about... What, Draxia? Almost everything they talked about is something that is a good thing and is a step in the right direction. However, most of those steps are entirely too piddling for my tastes. And I revert to... Hang on, let me get my don't give a damn. There we go. You have the resources, the access, the time, the materials, the money, the everything necessary to actually go full tilt and to take risks and to actually bother. Some of those risks will fail. That's why they're called risks. But they are being way too safe about their changes. They are tiptoeing into things that are good. Let's be clear about that. This is definitely a change in the right direction. But I do think this is way too little of a change in the right direction. The talent system, I'm actually in favor of it, believe it or not. I've never really been against talents. I just feel that the actual specifics of the design of talents have been boring or bad in multiple points in WoW's history and in other games in general. So the fact that they're going back to a talent system, cool. Whether it's good or not will depend on those specifics, and we have frustratingly little info there. Trying to move professions into a good format, trying to make professions more of a main content, absolutely in favor of it. We honestly need to just pull the trigger and make professions a class. That just needs to happen at some point. So we're there. Let's see. Writing, dragon writing, hugely positive about that. That's just that, like I said, they're just taking Guild Wars 2 flying mounts and saying, here you go. That's a good move. Making your mounts customizable in order to change their cosmetics, that's a good move. And so forth and so on. But I do feel they can and they should do more, and we'll see. And that really is the final sentence there. We'll see. We'll see where they go with this. We'll see the specifics. Because this is going to come down to the specifics. Will I play Dragonflight? Well, that's entirely up to PAX. And of course, you all. If I'm going to end up reviewing Dragonflight, that will be down to you all. And I think based on how FF14 did, using a similar method for an ongoing WoW expansion is something we could do. You know, in other words, you know, you fund at launch, and then there's another separate funding for patches, right? Something like that. I think someone asked me a question. I missed it there. Do I think this is their attempt to revitalize WoW after the crap fest of late? Actually, no, I don't. I know what you're thinking, but Lore... No, hear me out for a second. Let me take the hat back off for one moment. Because there's a really weird thing going on here. I am absolutely more than willing to fling mud at the Blizzard development team and most especially the management team. There is an absolutely, literally criminal level of mismanagement that's been going on at Blizzard for years, and that's nothing new. But I should also probably mention, and you notice the hat's off, that I actually feel bad for the people left behind at Blizzard, especially now. This was mentioned before, and this is something that needs to kind of be a thing in the future. People need to acknowledge this, I think, is that in many ways, BFA was a terrible idea by idiots who had no idea what they were doing, and Shadowlands, that was the attempt to revitalize WoW. This is their attempt to put their own stamp on things. This is not an attempt to revitalize WoW. This is an attempt to make WoW to begin with. This is what BFA should have been. New team, new arc, new story, etch-a-sketch the board a little bit, and new people trying to actually start from beginning, right? Yeah, just start over. You finished the story with Legion. You did it. Right? Like, we all agree, to some extent or another, Legion was the conclusion of the Warcraft story that had been building from Warcraft 1. So, that doesn't mean it needs to stop. It means you need to start something new. And you notice that is what they're doing. Not just in terms of narrative, but in terms of game design. They're actually sitting down and saying, okay, we're going to start doing our own thing, game design-wise. My question is, why did it take 3 expansions to do that? Now, I do understand that there's this thing called internal politics, and I absolutely do once again fling mud at the management teams of Blizzard, because that is almost assuredly where a lot of that mud deserves to be flung. So what I'm trying to say is I think that what's going on here isn't an attempt to revitalize or attempt to recapture people. I think it's being spun that way by the marketing team, but please remember that this expansion has been worked on for probably about 2 years now, because that's how that works. So, this is something that's been in the works by a lot of people to make their expansion for quite some time. We'll see where it goes going forwards. We won't see any real substantial changes from all the crap that's been happening lately. Probably not until, I'd say, the first patch or so, is when that content, which is being worked on now, will actually start to see light, and we'll start to see where it goes. So in other words, I'm not sure about that, Nerozaz. So Nerozaz asks if there's 2 teams still. I'm not sure. There used to be, and there was for the longest time, and I'm not sure anymore. And yeah, I kind of agree with that, Rex. But yeah, we're going back to being adventurers, which I'm not sure what I think about that. But what I do think is that we actually cannot decide with launch of Dragonflight whether WoW is going to be going in a new, different, let's call it what it is, better direction or not. Patch, what is that, 10.1? That's when we'll know. That's when we'll see. Now, having said all that, I guess that's it. Having said all that, having said all that, I just need to take over the world. Can we all agree with that? Can y'all just vote me for ruler of everything? Because it would make a lot of this a lot simpler. What are you linking me? No, Hazardous. Say my name. Anyways, that's actually all I got for Loreweek. I do hope that you have enjoyed this discussion, such as it is. Takoida needs to be executed for going against his rightful dictator, as we do. But for real, that's all we got. There will be no additional stream today. There will probably not be a stream tomorrow. If there is, it will be something that I won't know about until I'm there. So otherwise, we'll be going back to Elden Ring and the endless slog of boss killing on Tuesday. So, see you then.